been a civil war waging for the last 2 years, and those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many tens of kilometers have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies. Libya has become a major transit route for refugees.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
What kind of time do you call this? It is 3 minutes past 6 on a Saturday morning. Your weekend starts here. I am Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. A big 4 hours to come as we remember our war heroes this weekend. Just what were they fighting for? In a clip from an ITV interview that's gone viral, a 100-year-old veteran has said it wasn't worth it because of the state of modern Britain. Well, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, we'll be joined by war hero and former Brexit Secretary Sir David Davis is live on the show this morning. What were they fighting for? Was it all in vain? That's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. You won't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punches. It might get me cancelled. Good. Sorry, folks, I'm coming in hot today. I'm not happy. Now, the scandal over BBC impartiality worsens with the United States President Donald Trump blasting the corporation for editing his speech, misrepresenting what he said. Meanwhile, heroic news leader Martine Croxall has been supported by colleagues for correcting her TV script that read pregnant people. She called them women instead. Well, there's a backlash from woke BBC staff who want her fired. So does the Director General, Tim Davie, now have to go amid all of these scandals around our national state broadcaster? I'll be asking a man that served the corporation on air for decades. And old mastermind himself, Justice Secretary David Lammy, has presided over a huge jump in the number of people released from prison accidentally. He was an absolute shambles at Prime Minister's questions. Has he got to go? And is this now a crisis that threatens to engulf the government? Is Brain of Britain Lammy now next in line for the chop? Meanwhile, what about Sarah Ferguson? She's now homeless as a result of Charles's deal with Andrew. But here's the question. Is she planning a tell-all book to bring down the royal family? Are we asking the Mail on Sunday's editor-at-large? And Labour are now fourth in a new poll and set for their worst election result in a century. Is this the end of the Labour Party as we know it? And the cast of I'm a Celebrity has been revealed. Have you heard of any of them? I'll be asking the bizarre editor at the Sun newspaper for the inside track on who is going to be on the biggest show on British TV. So much to get through and a bit of fun at the end, folks. In our retro rewind, we'll be looking back at a glorious year of the past. So what year was it that Geri Halliwell of the Spice Girls wore that Union Jack dress, for which she'd be cancelled now? All will be revealed a very, very big 4 hours. It's all about your opinions. My priority, my objective, my focus is to get your views on the national television and radio airwaves. My number is 0344 499 1000 and Kushi is on the phones today, so book your call on the show. What were those veterans fighting for? Was it worth it? Would you fight for modern Britain? Let me know. 0344 499 1000 87222. Text the word talk and your message to that number. And as the saying goes, let's talk. So we'll start with a look at today's front pages and lots of big stories going on, including the best-selling newspaper in the country, the Sun newspaper. Sarah avoids disgraced ex, royal dodge. Disgraced Andrew Windsor is spending his last weeks at Royal Lodge ranting to himself as his ex-wife and fellow resident Sarah Ferguson pours out her heart to staff at a secret bar called the Doghouse. How ironic! You couldn't make it up. Insiders say the pair sleep at different ends of the huge 30-room home in Windsor and only join one another at mealtimes to discuss their unfortunate futures. Let's have a look now at the Times newspaper, the newspaper of record in this country, no less, at 6:08 in the morning. Reeves set to announce retirement savings raid. Am I the only one that's emotionally drained from all of these tax rumours? It's absolutely shocking, isn't it? Entirely self-inflicted. Don't give me that garbage about Brexit. That was 2016. We were out by 2020. That's 5 years ago. Brexit's not a new shock. And in fact, the sovereignty it gives us is outstanding. And we're not paying £20 billion a year for membership of this rather uncapitalistic club. And Donald Trump, he called himself Mr. Tariff. You can't say that the tariffs or Brexit or inflation or the post-pandemic hangover are a surprise. They are not. What was a surprise was the Halloween budget last year, and that's why Rachel Reeves is in the doo-doo. Anyhow, now let's have a look at this. Rachel Reeves will announce a stealth tax raid on retirement savings, a move experts said would reduce take-home pay and cut the size of pension pots. I mean, we are heading, aren't we, slowly but surely towards communism 2.0. Labour will lose the next election, but will there be a country left to govern when they vacate Downing Street? Claudia draws 12 million faithful. The Celebrity Traitors, presented by Claudia Winkleman, had a peak audience of 12 million for Thursday night's final, and it's been won by Alan Carr. A good presenter, isn't she, Claudia Winkleman? She got personality and charm. I've got to say, what a star she is. I suspect she'll be grabbed by Netflix in the very near future and offered a blank cheque to host some shows for them. Daily Mail now, exclusive book series, Prince William's open wound over the BBC man who tricked Diana into bearing her soul. That was, of course, the egregious Martin Bashir, who cooked up evidence, fake evidence, to get Diana to do that interview that damaged her and damaged the royal family so badly. Social media trolls fueled delusions of Polish Maddie. You see, sometimes I struggle with both reading and speaking, especially, by the way, at 6:10 in the morning. What are you going to do? At least you know it's live. At least it's proof this is live, folks. Not like that pre-recorded rubbish that you get on telly. I know, because I've done telly for many, many years, and it's all fake. Whereas here at Talk, it's all real. Right, let's get this sentence out. Social media trolls fueled delusions of Polish Maddie. An army of online conspiracy theorists fueled a Polish woman's harassment of Madeleine McCann's parents after she claimed to be the missing girl. Julia Wandelt, who's 24, gasped as a jury yesterday convicted her of tormenting Kate and Jerry McCann in a campaign that began on the internet but resulted in her turning up at the family's home. It's really shocking, isn't it? How much more have Kate and Jerry McCann got to go through in their lives, having lost their daughter so tragically, and now you've got this absolute lunatic who thinks that she's the daughter. You couldn't make it up. Exclusive, as Beatrice and Eugenie hug Andrew's hardball demands before he quits the Royal Lodge. By the way, let me know what you think. Shall I start calling Andrew Windsor? Because he's Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but I think that's a bit too grand. I'm not sure he's earned Mountbatten Windsor. Do we go Windsor? Let me know on the text. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Shall I call him Andrew Windsor? Or do you want Mountbatten Windsor? I'll let you decide. Daily Telegraph, Trump goes to war on the BBC. Donald Trump's White House has accused the BBC of purposeful dishonesty amid a row over bias at the broadcaster. The White House accused the BBC over a selectively edited Trump speech, dismissing the corporation as 100% fake news. How could you disagree? I'll be joined by Roger Bolton, who was a presenter on the Beeb for many years, later in the show. He may try to defend the BBC. Good luck with that. £1.4 billion wasted on insane NHS drive to hit net zero is the other story in the Telegraph, which we'll come to later. And how about this in the Eye Weekend? Labour MPs now plotting to oust Starmer as their anger grows about Number 10 and plan to raise income tax. With me in the studio reacting to the big stories of the day. No better man, let me tell you. An expert in political communications. He is known as the presentation coach. It is Graham Davis. Good morning, Graham.
And a very good morning to you, Mark.
Now, you have a glowing Canary Islands tan.
Yes, I've just come back from the London Republic of Lanzarote, where every single restaurant has a bottle of very high-profile brown sauce, and I managed to incorporate it into my suntan regime.
You're a lucky man. I haven't been to the Canary Islands since the 80s, but I've got happy memories of Playa de las Americas, I think it's called, in Tenerife.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and it's a lovely part of the world, isn't it? Strangely, it's Spain, even though it's off the coast of Africa.
Strangely, yes, but of course at this time of year, high 70s, almost unbroken sunshine.
Yeah, but aren't there woke people in Spain now campaigning for Spain to
Not
give
where
up
I was
the Canary Islands?
I'm afraid wokeness is, I believe, still illegal over there.
I'm glad, I blinking hope it is, yeah, because I'm sure that if Keir Starmer was the Prime Minister of Spain, he'd be handing back the Canaries, wouldn't he, to whatever country? I don't know, we could give it to China or something. It's all about relinquishing territory. Listen, we've got a really, really hot story today, and it's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 8 o'clock, Graham, and I'm not pulling my punches. It might get me cancelled. Good. And it's all about this clip. A 100-year-old war veteran asked on ITV about his memories of the war, and he said, I'll be honest with you, if I look at modern Britain, it wasn't worth it. Have we got the clip, Big Dean? Let's play that clip. Play the clip.
Our message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
What do you mean by that, though, at this point?
What we fought for, was our freedom. We find that even now it's darn sight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
Graham Davis, there'll be plenty of people that will agree with this man because we have a very disordered society. We've got rife shoplifting. You've got masked men walking down the street shouting, "Globalise the Intifada." It's not a great look for these heroes who sacrificed so much for our freedom.
He and his colleagues and his friends fought for 6 years against fascism to protect our freedom. And now we are an island nation that can't even protect its own borders. I can understand his feeling of just sheer sickness.
Well, that's right. And it's not just the illegal arrival of 50,000 people a year, most of whom, by the way, will stay. It's also the open borders policy of legal net migration, isn't it? Now, Britain is a multi-ethnic country, and that's not a problem. I'm an Irishman myself. We've all got genes from elsewhere. But what we had in the past was ordered low-level immigration that was based around integration, working, making a contribution, speaking the language, following the laws, and becoming British. That is not the immigration we have now, with 1 in 25 people in this country having arrived here in the last 5 years, and that's not what this man fought for.
Absolutely not. And I actually think there's time for, well, a change in terminology. Those 40 or 50,000 people who come in illegally, I think it's time we call that criminal immigration. And the people that come in under the rules, that's legal immigration, just to make it absolutely clear so people can't mishear it. And of course, as you say, it's the legal migration that in fact really swamps our system, whereby they're not net gainers for the economy, they're actually net takers, and that is what is really out of control and what is really causing the damage.
Well, that's right, because when those brave men got into jets and climbed into tanks and, you know, crawled across muddy fields in battle over 2 world wars, they were fighting for what they perceived to be England and Britain. And that's a country that subsequent generations have relinquished.
Well, there was always this feeling, I believe, from that gentleman and his colleagues that they were fighting for freedom. And now that freedom has become distorted on our streets. I'm thinking of the Maccabi Tel Aviv incident in Birmingham. We now have a situation where freedom is abused. This freedom of speech and freedom of protest, I believe it has now become time for it to be adjusted so that the police can have some discretion, much more discretion than they currently have, not to allow certain protest marches, certain protests under certain circumstances. At the moment, they have very little discretion.
No, and we've seen that with the weekly so-called peace marches, where you've had these rather threatening men yelling illegal slogans with impunity at the Cenotaph in Whitehall. And the Cenotaph, of course, which is where, that is the monument where we remember our war dead. And we've had the statue of Winston Churchill protected and boarded up. Otherwise, it would be attacked and vandalised. And this is obviously a huge problem, isn't it? What else do you think? What did this man mean when he said it wasn't worth it, do you think? You mentioned raise your points about freedom. Does it go beyond that? What else do you think he meant by his statement?
Well, I think he also meant that actually our respect for other religions has meant that, unfortunately, other people have been behaving poorly in relation to their religions. We have a situation now where there is essentially a sectarian party that has now got five.
Yeah,
I
had to check yesterday. 5 independents.
It's essentially a sectarian movement.
And that will grow, of course.
It will grow enormously, I think, in the next general election, and who knows, possibly encouraged in a twisted way by the Corbyn faction.
Yeah.
And so I think that is also a part of the illness that he's describing.
Good morning, Mark. The biggest threat to this country is this Labour government. Do you agree? When does this lying and deceit end? That's an unnamed texter. I've got to say, I am really worried about this government. I said before the last election, and by the way, I'm wrong about 97% of the time, but I did say on record before the election the Tories are terrible, Labour will be worse. We'll have more net zero, we'll have more strikes because they're in the pocket of the unions, we'll have more borrowing, more tax, more spending, a bigger state, more wokery, and here we are. And I say that with no pleasure at all. Tony says, Mark, the Green Party and your party, which is of course the Corbyn project, will destroy the Labour Party. Good morning, says Sharon in Staffordshire. Why is Lammy still in his job? He definitely needs to get the chop ASAP. Well, we'll come to that very, very shortly because, of course, Graham Davis is an expert on political presentation and has advised several party leaders and prime ministers. Rachel says, good morning, Mark. Getting used to hearing your voice at 6 on a Saturday. Well, Rachel, can I say I'm loving your ears, and it's so great to have your company. We've got a big audience at 6 in the morning. Of course, the show is growing, including from this early start. So if you're up today, may I salute you for being so disciplined to be up with the lark, with the kettle on, and God knows what you're up to. Perhaps you're at the tail end of a night shift, or maybe you're on your way to work. Whatever you're doing, it's lovely to have your company. Rachel says, can we look forward to the usual Dolan dispatch this morning? Rachel, you can. And let me tell you, it's about whether or not these veterans have fought for a country that we still have. Was it worth it is the topic. It might get me cancelled. Good. So, Rachel, do join me at 8 for that. Next up, Donald Trump goes to war on the BBC.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
The Daily Telegraph. Trump goes to war on the BBC at 24 minutes past 6, top of the morning to you. Donald Trump's White House has accused the BBC of purposeful dishonesty amid a row over bias at the broadcast. The White House accused the BBC over a selectively edited Trump speech, dismissing the corporation as 100% fake news. Caroline Leavitt, the president's very impressive press secretary, who knows her onions, said British taxpayers are being forced to foot the bill for a leftist propaganda machine. Well, I'll be joined by the legendary BBC broadcaster Roger Bolton later in the show. He may try to defend the corporation. Will you, Graham Davis?
Well, it's strange that about 10 minutes ago you mentioned something appalling that was perpetrated by a senior BBC journalist, Martin Bashir, 3 decades ago. How amazing that they should perpetrate a fraud then. How things have changed at the BBC in the last 3 decades.
Completely reformed. There was also the Peter Fincham drama. This man was running the BBC, controller, I think, of BBC One, when they edited the Queen during a clip in which they made it look like she stormed out of a photo shoot, which, of course, she had not, and he lost his job over it. So the Beeb have previous on this.
Well, I've got to say, I even take issue with your use of the word edit. Now, of course, the edit button on any piece of kit in a TV station is possibly the most powerful piece of kit that anybody can use.
Yes.
But this wasn't an edit. This wasn't a distortion. It wasn't selective reporting. It was an out-and-out fraud. The blend of the first clip with the second clip, which was about, what, 20 or 30 minutes later in the same
Correct.
speech, you've got to look pretty carefully to realise that it is a blend. And it is an absolute lie. The BBC, I could always accept a certain left-of-centre bias, a certain tone, because you sort of knew where they stood. But now they've crossed a line massively into essentially a big, dark lie.
Well, that's right, and you're right to use the word lie, you're right to use the word fraud. It's also propaganda, isn't it?
It is, and it is indeed the sort of propaganda that a certain party in the 1930s would have been very proud of, because it turns something from X into Y, black into white. And I was genuinely stunned. I actually had to watch the blend 10 or 12 times to appreciate the sheer horror of what I was seeing.
Well, that's right, because Donald Trump is there, he's at the podium, and he said you have to go down the Capitol, and then, as you say, half an hour later, he's like, you've got to do it peacefully, and, you know, just sort of very calmly, and what did he say, patriotically and peacefully. You know, he was abundantly clear, he was overt in his messaging that this should be peaceful.
He certainly was. And also, I'm not somebody who's an automatic Trump fan. He is somebody who sometimes played a bit fast and loose with the absolute truth himself.
I should say so.
And I'm being kind in that description. But especially when you're dealing with somebody like Donald Trump, who perhaps has a loose relationship occasionally with the truth, I believe that the state broadcaster should be very careful to be absolutely pristine clean with this sort of thing. And they've muddied their hands forever now.
Well, that's right. I mean, Donald Trump, he's an extraordinary personality. He kept Kamala Harris out of the White House, for which I thank him. But of course, he's a flawed person. He's rather narcissistic. He's fast and loose with the truth. But actually, most politicians are. I mean, look at the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who pretended to be a Corbynite when he got elected as leader of the Labour Party and then immediately shifted right and ditched all of those Corbynite policies. The guy that said, you know, I won't raise taxes at the last election, knowing full well he would have to. And so, you know, these politicians all together, what are the implications for the BBC of this row now, given that the White House has stepped in, do you think?
Well, they can no longer hold up the shield of we are the state broadcaster, we are the original TV broadcaster in the world, we are the epitome of integrity. It means that they cannot do that anymore. And of course, when Donald Trump, when he's controlling his press conferences and somebody puts their hand up and he says, oh, it's so-and-so from the BBC, you're a piece of work, I always had a certain amount of sympathy for the poor BBC correspondent who happened to be there at the time. But now, frankly, I don't.
No, it's a big headache for the corporation. Do you think that Tim Davie now, the Director General, is under pressure to go?
Well, especially because the report, and it's not just the Trump thing, of course, that's in the internal report, was indeed an internal report that's been leaked out. It's not somebody who's come to a conclusion from the outside. It's not just mere politicians attacking him. He has essentially had his foundations and his kneecaps taken off from within, if that's a slightly strained metaphor. But I think it's going to be very difficult for him to stand up and stay.
Also, it's not just the Trump speech, which is an egregious act. It's not an oversight or a mistake. It was, as you said, preconceived.
It's a broadcast crime.
It really, really is. And it was deliberate. It was there to misrepresent Donald Trump and frame him in a shocking way. And, you know, it's obviously now too late to fix that. But you've also got this expose, this leaked memo, as published by the Daily Telegraph, revealing that 30 Oxbridge historians that wrote to the BBC with their concerns about the rewriting, the woke rewriting of British history, factually inaccurate. Their concerns were ignored by the corporation because it had a narrative to peddle about this country and its past. Then gender-critical voices were silenced in the trans debate. Gender-critical means that you think there are two sexes. That's not gender-critical, that's gender-factual. And also other sort of issues around integration that were, misrepresented by the organisation. So this doesn't look like one individual editor at Panorama. This is systemic.
The BBC Politburo has a policy of blasting things away with an airbrush. And you look particularly at the Martine Croxall incident.
Yeah,
this is
newsreader that corrected herself and said pregnant women.
This is somebody who, fair play to her, she is a hardcore broadcast news veteran. She takes the idea of objectivity very seriously indeed. I've never seen her have a facial expression. I mean, I've seen more facial expressions on Mount Rushmore when she's doing a news clip. But for her to be in some way disciplined because apparently her eyebrow raised by about 0.1 of a millimetre when she did that highly professional correction of pregnant people to women, I find that absolutely mind-boggling. I can imagine the HR interviewer saying, well, I'm afraid when you did that, you showed some integrity, and that's not something we encourage at the BBC.
Devastating but brilliant from Graham Davis, who's back in just a moment. Listen, how about this from an unnamed texter, with which I do agree. Hi, Mark, I'm sorry, but my heritage goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. I am English. It is an ethnicity my grandfather would be ashamed of the UK too. And you're absolutely right. It is a multi-ethnic society, but this is England, and it's Wales, and it's Scotland, and it's Northern Ireland. And there are millions of people that have deep, deep roots in this country, who made this country, who are the identity and definition of this country. And I say that as an Irishman myself, that I come here and I acknowledge the idea of and the ethnic truth of ethnicity. It is a thing, and it must be celebrated. So thank you for that, and you're absolutely right. Good morning, Mark. I could not agree more with that brave veteran. He's 100% right. My nan said to me 40 years ago that this would happen. She was dead right. I'm only glad my nan and granddad, both of whom did their bit during World War II, are no longer here to see the state of this once great nation. That's Paul in Hitchin. And Dan in Kent says, bless Matt Vickers, a band member of the Tory Titanic. I like Boris, but he was a lovable buffoon. And now he's just a buffoon. And produced wokery and bureaucracy. Human rights lawyers are having a field day and the economy is stuffed. Wake up, Britain. And Valerie. Good morning, Mark. I always enjoy your show. My dad fought in the war like many others. I've said many times they fought to keep the enemy out. Now they are letting the enemy in. Shocking. It has to be stopped now. Valerie, thank you so much for that text. Listen, I love your messages, love your calls. The switchboard is filling up and we'll take those calls in the next hour. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Next up, is it game over for Mastermind himself, David Lammy?
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Let me tell you, very excited about this in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. Former military hero and ex-Brexit Secretary Sir David Davis is live on the show. Dean, what time is David Davis on the show? 9:15. You won't want to miss that. We'll be talking about this viral clip of a war veteran, 100 years of age, who went on ITV. They were expecting a cosy, comfortable conversation, and he said, sorry, I hate to spoil the party. It wasn't worth it. Kate Garraway and Adil Ray, who loves Sharia law, were absolutely horrified, and I thought they tried to take over the conversation, but he got his point across. David Davis at 9 o'clock, and don't forget at 8 a.m, Dolan's dispatch on that very subject. But let's talk now about someone that should be dispatched, and it's David Lammy, who presided over an absolute Horlicks of a performance at Prime Minister's Questions, forgot to wear his poppy, then suddenly wore it in a trick that would have Paul Daniels blushing. Meanwhile, he's presided over a massive jump in the number of people being allowed to leave prison accidentally. Graham Davis, you're an expert on political presentation. What do you make of David Lammy?
Well, I'm not sure whether he is a dark horror show or a comedy routine. He's a cross between Stephen King and Spinal Tap.
That's brilliant.
He's the gift that keeps on giving.
And he turned it up to 11 on Wednesday, didn't he?
I think he went to 12 occasionally, because 5 times the questioner, James Cartledge, gave him only 2 options. And option A, if he chose to answer the question, the government would look incompetent. Option B, if he chose not to answer the question, he would look incompetent. And because he answered in the same evasive way 5 times, he managed to cover both option A and option B, thus making himself look 500% more presentationally incompetent than his boss Keir Starmer. It was a hell of an achievement.
Yes, he's the Homer Simpson of British politics, isn't it? Wherein you can see the cogs whirring inside his head when he tries to answer a question.
Homer Simpson, that's a bit unfair. To be fair, it was a new suit he was wearing, as he told us as one of his excuses for not preparing.
Oh, yeah, do you know about the riddle of the suit? Because what's the story there? That he said he'd bought a new suit which didn't have the poppy on it.
Well, what he said was, originally, the words that he were said, and I'm not going to try and paraphrase too much because I don't want to distort things, because his actual words are pretty self-condemnatory in themselves. He said, oh, I've just bought this new suit because I wanted to look my best for a relative. Now, it was clarified later on by a Labour source that he'd bought the suit for the day, not on the day, because people were quite rightly sort of saying, why were you out buying a suit when you should have been preparing for PMQs?
Yes, exactly, and it was misleading because it implied that he'd bought it that day, which is why it didn't have the poppy on it. And then it's like, no, I bought it for that day. It's kind of a semantic thing, but it's just, if you were a detective, you'd be like, this needs further investigation. I've got more questions.
Well, of course, much worse than that was the fact that clearly all the sources tend to suggest that he did in fact know about the next accidental release before PMQs,
yeah,
but decided not to answer or come out and say, look, thank you for asking that question. I'm glad you brought it up, because I do, with great sadness, have to say to you that such and such has happened. It's a source of great regret, and it's something I have to hold up my hands to, and we really do need to tighten things up. Thank you for asking. But no. He much preferred to sort of, well, not just block the ball back, but avoid playing it.
Well, he's a terrible politician, and I think an incredibly thick man, as demonstrated by this clip.
Had 800 errors under the last government. This has now gone on for a generation. Our prison system is in crisis, so we have to bear down on this, but we have a mountain to climb. At the dispatch box, I did not have all of the detail. That detail was actually released just later, after I had finished at Prime Minister's Questions. I took the judgment that it is important when updating the House and the country about serious matters like this that you have all of the detail. I was not equipped with all of the detail, and the danger is that you end up misleading the House and the general public. So that is the judgment I took. I think it's the right judgment.
You end up misleading the House. Is he saying the true bit out loud?
Well, there was a bit of a Freudian slip there, I agree, because in fact James Cartledge phrased the question, can you assure us, yes or no? He didn't actually say yes or no, but it was a yes-no answer. For David Lammy to say that he needed to have more detail before answering the question, that is an exaggeration.
What are your thoughts about him as a politician?
His share price dipped dramatically.
Is he a liability? Is he inept, or has he just been unlucky? Because let's be honest, he's only been Justice Secretary for a matter of days.
Yes, he's only been Justice Secretary for a matter of days. Before that, he was representing this country abroad. He and Reeves and Starmer are a sort of unholy trinity at the top of the Labour Party. Remember, this is a government that's managed to get to a level of loathing in 17 months that took the Tory party 14 years to get to. And usually that level of hatred and dislike from the electorate is caused by the people at the top. And so he epitomises that top-down problem that they have.
Let's take a listen to this wizard in action on Mastermind on the BBC some years ago.
What was the married name of the scientists Marie and Pierre who won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1903 for their research into radiation?
Antoinette.
Curie. Which fortress was built in the 1370s to defend one of the gates of Paris and was later used as a state prison by Cardinal Richelieu?
Versailles.
The Bastille. James Gandolfini played a mafia boss called Tony in which American television series?
Godfather.
The Sopranos. Who acceded to the English throne at the age of 9 on the death of his father Henry VIII in 1547?
Henry VII.
Edward VI. In chemistry, what French word is used for a tube for transferring measured amounts of liquids?
Pass.
Which country's so-called Rose Revolution of 2003 led to the resignation of its president, Edward Shevardnadze?
Yugoslavia.
No, it was Georgia.
Well, you see, he was never going to get the answer about the sequence of prisoner releases right, because he thought that Henry VII came after Henry VIII.
That's it. Not very good at ordering personnel, is he? Which makes him a not ideal Justice Secretary. That was his appearance on Mastermind. There's a devastating post from Dominic Cummings about Lammy on X this week. It was a couple of days ago, and I will say it's damning. Now, Dominic Cummings, of course, was Boris Johnson's chief advisor in Number 10, at least for the first stint of his premiership. And of course, Dominic Cummings, one of the people behind Vote Leave and therefore Brexit. And Cummings has said David Lammy is the logical conclusion of multiculturalism and DEI politics. A useless, and then it's got a swear word, humiliating the country, the Commons and black people. If he were assistant manager in JD Sports, the 18-year-old staff would say, over-promoted idiot, get rid of him. If Labour keep putting him up, they will destroy themselves even faster. Don't believe me? Put that video in focus groups with swing voters outside London and see what they say. He's a perfect symbol of how our pathological institutions have destroyed confidence in themselves, why their unprecedented hatred for politicians, and why regime change is coming. Pretty damning.
Perhaps the worst aspect of his character that he showed during PMQs was when he was asked the fourth time that he actually started his question with the shouted phrase, "Get a grip, man," and went to immediate incandescent anger. And that is the sure sign of an egotist, a narcissist who shouldn't be there.
6:46, this is Talk Breakfast. Let me tell you, Dolan's dispatch and Sir David Davis on the way. Were the veterans fighting for a Britain that we're now proud of? Let me know your thoughts on that. But coming up next, this is a very, very big story indeed. Could this be the last ever Labour government? That's next.
Is the BBC in crisis with this dossier?
Where do you start? I mean, is it in crisis? I mean, there seems to be a crisis every week. And what we're talking about here is somebody who has an opinion, which whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, is still an opinion. And some of the things that are being said do have to be investigated.
But it's not an opinion to point out that video of Donald Trump was edited.
No, it's an opinion. It's an opinion because obviously it's editing. You edit everything. The fact of the matter is, you make a decision as to whether or not you feel it's actually still reflective of the overall key message.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is 6:50. This is Talk Breakfast. The weekend, Labour MPs now plotting to oust Starmer as their anger grows about Number 10 and a plan to raise income tax. We now have Labour polling fourth and potentially with the worst election performance at the next election in their history. Graham Davis, you've advised several party leaders and prime ministers. You're an expert on political presentation. Is this the beginning of the end for the Labour Party in government?
Well, in terms of the fragility of the leadership, of course, the Tories have this motto, lose a leader, win the next election. Whereas, in fact, to try and get rid of a Labour leader, it's like at the speed of a tectonic plate.
Yeah.
It is remarkable to see what Keir Starmer's regime has managed to do in terms of its popularity ratings in the last few polls.
Yeah.
Now, of course, obviously, polls are a snapshot of a particular group of people at a very particular time. I don't think anybody genuinely looking at that last amazing poll showing Labour in fourth place necessarily believes that's going to be a reflection of what happens in 3 years, or indeed even in 6 months in the local elections. But it does show that they are remarkably fragile and have managed to get that fragility in a remarkably short space of time. Politics these days moves at the speed of light. There has never been a more volatile political marketplace.
And I think it's because, is it not, that Keir Starmer is not a particularly gifted politician?
He's essentially constantly recovering from a charisma bypass operation. Politics in Britain, even these days, is presidential. You need to have a personality who's a leader.
And it has been since Thatcher, don't you think?
Yes, indeed. Now, of course, there are dangers of the charismatic leader. Boris Johnson was undoubtedly a remarkable election winner, but in my opinion, a disastrous leader and a disastrous prime minister.
But what he didn't have is the ability to deliver and to run the country.
Absolutely, and that would have been the case irrespective of the Russia invasion of Ukraine and of COVID.
Yeah.
But you do need a presidential candidate and a presidential administrator, a chief executive. It's quite difficult to find those two in the same body.
It really is, isn't it? I mean, Sunak, for example, quite a good technocrat. I thought that he actually steadied the ship when it came to the economy, but he lacked the sort of the common touch and the charm to win over the public.
A very good managing director, and I think that he could say, in some ways, like William Hague was unlucky being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Rishi Sunak came in after the Truss fiasco. If he'd come in and got elected instead of Truss and had some more time to steady the ship, or if Boris had gone very early during Partygate, a Sunak calming administration would possibly have steadied the ship. But he really had no chance coming in after Truss.
All MPs are ambitious. All MPs are focused on self-preservation. It's career first, party second, country third, I would argue. And therefore, they will want to make sure that they stay in the House of Commons at the next election, Labour MPs, that is. Would a change in leader solve their problems?
Their problems are so fundamental because they are now in a situation which is epitomised by Reeve's challenges on the 26th of November. They have very little room for manoeuvre. They have already a very narrow window for them to go through for the next 3 years. And what would a new leader do that would be different? Yes, there might be something. There might be a little bit more charisma. There might be some more warmth. There might be some more empathy with the electorate from, say, a Wes Streeting premiership. But really, Wes Streeting, radical, right-of-centre Labour chap though he is, he still would have the same lack of room for manoeuvre. So to answer your question, no, I don't think it would make much difference.
Because if you changed leader, you'd still have inflation, you'd still have rising unemployment, a drop in investment, you'd still have the workers' rights bill, which of course Tony Blair hates and it's going to hurt growth, and you'd still have a parliamentary party that won't allow the one thing this country needs, which is spending cuts.
You still have a situation whereby the ruling party would not be able to find a mechanic whereby the country lives within its means.
And you have to say that if you look at the three, sort of very, very key protagonists of this administration at the moment, the people that are making headlines this week are Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer and David Lammy, none of whom have a gift for political communication.
They don't. In fact, they're a communication-free zone a lot of the time. They're sort of almost anti-communicators rather than positively adding to the mix.
Most definitely. Let's have a look at some other front pages. The Guardian newspaper, tackle climate to beat populists, says Miliband. And Johnson, part of anti-BBC push, fear insiders. Boris Johnson and figures linked to the former PM are engaging in an effort to undermine the BBC's leadership. Insiders fear after the leaking of a memo criticising its reporting of Donald Trump, trans rights and Gaza. Interesting there. The Guardian circling the wagon to protect the woke BBC. Maddie, fantasist, guilty. We hope she gets the care she needs. The parents of Madeleine McCann say the fantasist who pretended to be their missing daughter needs help. Julia Wandelt was convicted of harassing them for 3 years. Kate and Jerry said, we hope she will get the care she needs. As if these people, the McCanns, haven't suffered enough. You have this imposter pretending to be their daughter. It's devastating, isn't it?
It's a terrible thing. And what must be particularly disturbing for them is that the woman in question has been convicted of the offence of harassment, but not of the offence of stalking. And the maximum penalty for harassment is 6 months. She's already done that on remand. And so stalking, you might be boggling at the thought that she wasn't convicted of stalking. Well, under the wording of the legislation, there has to be more probably persistent behaviour on a non-stop basis and consecutive days. And technically she wasn't doing it every day, which is why probably the jury found her not guilty of that particular offence. So really, she's not going to get any extra penalty to what she has already served.
Cliff in Berkshire, good morning, Mark. Could this be the last Labour government? Please, God. Good morning, Mark, says Maureen in Stamford. The most scary thing about David Lammy is he must actually believe he's intelligent for ever agreeing to go on Mastermind. Wesley S says, the problem you've got is that there are too many human rights defence lawyers. They're not importing workers, they're importing customers. From Wills in Wigan, Will says, Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, should be sacked today with no payoffs or a gold-plated pension. He is a disgrace. Keep those messages coming. Send the word text. Send the word talk in your text to 87222, and you can call us, book your place on the show, 03444991000. I've got more front pages for you coming up, folks. And does anyone care about I'm a Celebrity? Will you be watching it this year? We have the cast list, and I'll be revealing whether they've been heard of. Have you heard of them? I've got to say, I've not heard of half of them, which is very unfortunate indeed. Daily Mail exclusive book series, Prince William's open wound over the BBC man who tricked Diana into bearing her soul. Well, the BBC is a big, big topic of today's show, given the fact that Donald Trump now has attacked the corporation over the editing of his speech on January the 6th. It's all to come. But the big story in town is the 100-year-old war veteran who has said on ITV it wasn't worth fighting for the country that Britain has now become. We'll get reaction from war veteran and Brexit Secretary formerly Sir David Davis, and that's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch. More big opinions and front pages next.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Top of the morning to you. It is 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here. A big 3 hours to come. As we remember our war heroes this weekend, just what were they fighting for? In a clip from an ITV interview that's gone viral, a 100-year-old veteran has said it wasn't worth it because of the state of modern Britain. Is he right? 0344 499 1000. In a Talk Breakfast exclusive, we'll be joined by war hero and former Brexit Secretary Sir David Davis. What were they fighting for? Was it all in vain? That's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. You won't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punches. It might get me cancelled. Good. The scandal over BBC impartiality worsens, with the United States President Donald Trump blasting the corporation for editing his speech, misrepresenting what he said. Meanwhile, heroic newsreader Martine Croxall has been supported by colleagues for correcting herself on TV and referring to pregnant women rather than pregnant people. But now there's a woke backlash from BBC insiders. It's a hot mess. So how do you solve a problem like the BBC? Is it time for the Director General to go? That's Tim Davie. I'll be asking a top broadcaster who served with the corporation for decades, Roger Bolton, coming up later this hour. He might try to defend the BBC. Good luck with that. Also, mastermind himself, Justice Secretary David Lammy, has presided over a big jump in the number of people released from prison accidentally. Is this a crisis that threatens to engulf the government? I'll get reaction from a former top copper. Why are people being released from prison? And is Brain of Britain Lammy now next in line for the chop? So much more to come, but let me tell you, at 7:05 in the morning, I want to put your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. My number is 0344 499 1000. Kushi is taking your calls, a fabulous producer of mine who's looking after the shop today. Who is that? Who's directing the output? My eyes... Davis is back. It's been a long time. Let me tell you, this is not just a radio show, it's TV as well. So if you want to watch Talk Breakfast, just head to YouTube and search Talk. And Davis has got my better side today. I'm covered in makeup, folks, because only the best for you. The executive producer is Dean Spencer, and our chief engineer is Tech Op Dave. So listen, we've got the dream team. So much to get through. Book your place on the show, 0344 499 1000. And as the saying goes, let's talk. And we'll kick off with some front pages. Daily Mail, social media trolls fueled delusions of Polish Maddie. An army of online conspiracy theorists fueled a Polish woman's harassment of Madeleine McCann's parents after she claimed to be the missing girl. Well, she's a fantasist, she's full of nonsense, and she's now going to receive a sentence for her crimes. The Weekend. There's trouble in paradise, folks. Labour MPs now plotting to oust Starmer as their anger grows about Number 10 and his plan to raise income tax. Daily Telegraph, Trump goes to war on the BBC, and £1.4 billion wasted on insane NHS drive to hit net zero. Daily Express, give the gift of freedom for every child. Daily Mirror, Maddie fantasist guilty. We hope she gets the care she needs, say parents. Guardian newspaper, tackle climate to beat populists, says Miliband. And The Times, Rachel Reeves set to announce retirement savings raid. Last but not least, The Sun newspaper, Sarah avoids disgraced ex. Royal dodge. Disgraced Andrew Windsor is spending his last weeks at Royal Lodge ranting to himself as ex-wife and fellow resident Sarah Ferguson pours out her heart to staff at a secret bar called the Doghouse. Now, let me tell you, there's only one story in town, and it is the war veteran who's 100 years of age who went on ITV. They were expecting a very cosy interview. Well, he dropped a few truth bombs. Have we got the clip? Let's play that clip. You'll be quite shocked by this. Take a listen.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
What do you mean by that, though, at this point?
What we fought for, was our freedom. We find that even now it's darn sight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
Well, with me in the studio is one of the world's leading political presentation coaches, someone that's advised several prime ministers and party leaders, Graham Davis. Graham, what did this heroic war veteran mean by those remarks?
It's difficult to imagine the pain he must have suffered during the course of the 6 years of World War II, when he was constantly losing colleagues, constantly losing friends. But now in 2025, you could see and hear the level of pain that he still felt as a result of seeing what he felt the country has got to. And it was one of the most unalloyed pieces of emotion I've seen on TV for a long time.
Yeah.
I think he's looking at the sort of lack of social cohesion we have in the country, the fact that demonstrations occur in a way that is often obnoxious to right-thinking people, far too often, with results that mean that people are feeling discriminated against, feeling attacked, and it's not the sort of country that feels as if it has fought successfully for freedom.
Well, Georgina is going to join us in just a moment, I think, because she's got a few rather potent remarks to make about that. This has gone viral for good reason, because this gentleman speaks for millions who are concerned about the direction of this country.
Yes, it has. And very few people can actually convey emotion like that in front of a TV camera.
Yeah.
And he did, magnificently.
Yes, it wasn't airbrushed, was it? And it wasn't scripted. This is ITV, where they've got producers and they've got, you know, the prompter script, and this guy very much went off script.
They let him go, they let him rip, and it was actually rather... Well, in a way, although he was talking about something sad, something bitter, something dark, it was rather uplifting to see them giving him that leeway to do that. And
Most definitely.
And you do get the impression that he speaks for a lot of people.
Definitely. What are your thoughts about the handling of that interview? Because I felt that although Kate Garraway was sympathetic and empathetic, I felt there was an attempt to actually stop him saying anything else of that nature. It felt like she sort of jumped in to rescue the situation.
It's always difficult, especially as a double act of presenters, because you have to do a certain amount of mind reading as to what your co-presenter is thinking. And yes, there was probably just a hint of a producer nipping in to say, oh, I hope we're not going to go down any aspect which could be conceivably be seen as having ethnic comments or racist comments.
Yeah.
There was just a hint of that. But actually, I think she, although she was ready to get the handbrake out, didn't quite. And I think fair play to her, she
Correct.
did just about get it right.
She didn't interrupt him.
Yes.
I thought what she did is picked up the slack very rapidly, which I wouldn't have done, because I'd have allowed this man to elaborate, because it was interesting what he had to say. But he said enough to get his point across. So I'll tell you someone that's very good at doing that is Georgina in London. Good morning, Georgina.
Good morning, Mark. It's great to talk to you.
Well, it's lovely to have you on the show. This poor man, he's 100 years of age, he's on ITV. They were expecting a cosy conversation, and he gave them anything but, didn't he?
Well, I was very proud of him for his candour, and I really do think that they should have been a little more respectful. The man might be 100 years old, but they were treating him like he was a 5-year-old. Just because he's 100 doesn't mean he's senile. He had everything was about him. He knew what was going on, and he said it as it was. But, you know, I was listening to what he said, and I can understand, you know, why would any veteran be proud of a country that shuns and forgets them after they've given life and limb on the battlefield? Why would any veteran want to fight for a country that prioritises foreigners before them, allowing them to sleep on the streets, while illegal immigrants are housed, fed and watered, and given priority NHS and dental treatment? These men fought for our freedom of speech and movement. They fought to protect our borders, our country, our population, and our democracy, only to see this government take it away bit by bit. And it's only now, when we see it being taken away, that we realise how very important it was and how much we took it for granted. I can understand, Mark, completely the sadness of our veterans when we have a government that has no respect for either them, our country, our flag, or our heritage. It's soul-destroying to see what's happened here in Britain. And whilst we have this Labour government, sadly, I can only see things getting worse. I mean, our country now looks more like a third world country every day. Our streets are not paved with gold, and our gravy boat is empty. And we need to stop this ridiculous benevolence to foreign nationals and stop prioritising our own, starting with the ones who have sacrificed the most, like Alec. And the sooner Starmer and his gang realise this, the better. We've got to start prioritising number one, rather than the government prioritising how they can stay in number 10 and 11. And we should be celebrating our veterans every day for what they've done for us, not just one Sunday in a year.
And we should unilaterally end the failed multicultural experiment, should we not, Georgina? We have a multi-ethnic society, although English ethnicity is an important thing to appreciate, but we have a multi-ethnic society, but the multicultural experiment has failed.
Well, I think multiculturalism has brought this country to its knees. We no longer have our own identity, and this, to me, is heartbreaking. We need to realise what Britain is all about and find out once again who we are. Britain is a great nation and will be great if we get a government that realises just how wonderful Britain and the British people are.
Georgina, can the Britain for which this man fought be reclaimed?
It can, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a government that actually believes in the essence of Britain, the soul of Britain. We need to get the heart of Britain beating again, Mark.
Georgina, my heart beats every time you call the show. Thank you so much for joining us. You spoke so well, as did this 100-year-old veteran who gave ITV a very uncomfortable experience. And let me tell you, I agree with Georgina that, yes, this man wasn't interrupted, but you could tell how uncomfortable the hosts were, and they certainly talked down to him like he was a 5-year-old child. Final thoughts on this before we let you go, Graham, because I know you've got a busy afternoon.
Well, the thing that struck me most, we are both proudly wearing our poppies today.
Yeah.
And it's not just veterans who fought magnificently during World War II that we should be concerned about. It's veterans who fought in more recent conflicts over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I think that, frankly, this government and previous Tory governments have not looked after our veterans well enough. There are so many of them who are struggling with mental issues, with physical health issues, with financial issues. They have done more for this country, perhaps, than any other category of person. We must do more for our veterans.
More on this coming up. My deep thanks to the presentation coach himself, Graham Davis. Lovely to see you. Enjoy the rugby this afternoon. South Africa, France.
Looking forward to it.
It's a big game, and good luck England against Fiji, right? Brilliant stuff. We've got more front pages next. But those veterans, did they fight in vain for what Britain has become in 2025? We'll be asking a former war hero next.
good at this end, apart from this rather disturbing poll that says 8 in 10 say the nation is divided now. That wasn't meant to be the order of events in the 21st century.
It certainly wasn't, and I was deeply troubled by the comment we had earlier by somebody who had literally fought for this country in the Second World War. And to think that those that gave their lives, those that risked their lives to fight for this great country, are now looking at the state that we're currently in and thinking, you know what, this wasn't worth it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Now listen, a war veteran has surprised two ITV presenters by saying that the Britain that he fought for was not worth it. Here's the clip.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
What do you mean by that, though? At this point?
What we fought for, was our freedom. We find that even now it's darn sight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
Amanda has messaged Talk Breakfast. Mark, my heart went out to the old soldier who thought his friends had died in vain. Politicians, particularly the left, are not worthy to clean his boots for how they've destroyed this country. Anthony says it was clearly all in vain. The proof is in the pudding. Wealthy people who can afford to leave are leaving. That surely speaks for itself. I've just left also after 46 years with 3 kids. I believe Anthony has moved to Auckland. Anthony, I'm so delighted, though, that you've stayed in touch with the country and continue to listen to Talk. Tim says, Mark, I'm Tim, I'm a veteran. My greatest respect to our veteran, all of our veterans. I served during the Cold War. Unfortunately, I didn't have to do what our hero faced. And I also wonder why we did it. And Susan says, hi, Mark, Georgina, your caller is brilliant. You should get her on the show. Bless the soldier, Alec. And that's Sue from Essex. Sue, thank you for that. And yes, Georgina speaks so well, and this war veteran spoke so well. Someone else that speaks so well is a man that served in the military with great distinction. Retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Mark.
What did you make of that clip of a 100-year-old veteran saying it wasn't worth the fight?
Well, I've got a friend who's a 103-year-old veteran, and I think a lot of veterans feel the same. I'm the 5th generation of the 5 generations of my family. I'm the 4th generation to be in the armed forces, and I think people just look around and they see that they can't say what they want to say. You know, they can't. They're criticised for what they say, and I just think people are really angry. A lot of veterans are angry that they fought for country. I was in Northern Ireland, and you see people being prosecuted there 50 and 60 years after what happened. It's just not good enough at the moment.
It most definitely isn't. And what did you make of the presenter's handling of the interview? Because I felt that they sort of jumped on what he said. And I actually think Adil Ray, who's the ITV presenter that does Good Morning Britain, tried to catch him out by saying, what do you mean by that? I felt like he was digging there.
Well, there's a cult of multiculturalism in this country, and it's not some sort of political desire. It's a religion to these people, and they're obsessed with it. And anybody who questions that multiculturalism is criticised. And when you can jump on somebody who's 100 years old and trying to drag something out of them, that's not good enough. But that's what it is. The country he fought for was a country where everybody was like him, I suppose, and he doesn't doesn't like it. People don't like things being imposed on them without a vote, and no one has ever voted for multiculturalism. It was a thing that the elite thought was a good idea, and no one ever said, would you like this? And everybody's been forced to endure it, whether they like it or not. I suppose the worst of it you saw is in Birmingham this week, my grandfather liberated Belsen concentration camp. He fought from D-Day up to 1945, and now we have a situation where my grandfather's liberating Belsen concentration camp, and then Jewish fans can't go to a football match in this country. That's something my grandfather would have thought was an outrage.
Indeed, if a child of yours wanted to serve in the military in 2025, would you encourage them?
Well, my daughter's a reservist nurse, so she's already done that. So I'm really proud that she's made that step forward. But in all these things, the military is wonderful in the sense that you learn discipline, you learn how to look after yourself, you learn how to protect your country. But the problem is you're not protected anymore. Just like we're seeing, the problem is with young people is they see veterans from Northern Ireland being persecuted and prosecuted, and that's not the way forward, in my view.
No, it most definitely isn't. And it sparked a national conversation, which I think is very valuable at this point, isn't it? I think that what I should say, let me correct his name, this chap is, I've now luckily completely forgotten his name, but it'll come back to me. What he's done, this man, is he's sparked a conversation that we need to have about what this country has become and what it's continuing to become.
Absolutely, but that's the first debate we've had. With politicians in the past have been criticised. Anybody who questioned the cult of multiculturalism has been shut down, shut up. Anybody who's questioned it has been called racist. At least now, because of stations like Talk, is that we can actually debate these things. But the tragedy is, has it gone too far?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What are your reflections on your time serving in the military?
I had a great time. I was a 16-year-old lad, and I came from Bolton, and I was given the opportunity to go adventure training in Hong Kong, and so it widens your outlook. You realise that Bolton isn't the centre of the universe, and you realise that the whole thing is bigger than you. The Army's been good to me for many, many years, and my brother as well, he served for nearly 30 years. So the Army's good, or the armed forces as a whole, whether we laugh at each other, we take the mickey out of people in the RAF and the Royal Navy, but we're all part of one big family, and it's a wonderful thing to do. But you do look at things and you think, why would I do it as a whole for the country? Because the country is a complete mess at the moment.
Most definitely. Taking a bullet for your country, which is what those men and some women did as well in 2 world wars. You also have to wonder, with the spectacular failure of Britain's multicultural experiment, Mike, that there are plenty of people, should our borders be threatened by a foreign aggressor, there's millions of people that probably would not fight for this country. They don't identify as British.
Well, not only would they not fight for it, they'd fight against us. And I always look back to my own football team, Bolton Wanderers, and there's a great book about the Wanderers at war. They all joined the army in 1939. The entire team fought for this country, and they fought all the way from they came back from Dunkirk, and then all the way through North Africa and Italy up to southern Germany. If you did it these days, all the people in the football team would be fighting against each other. And the problem is, I suppose, is that with this country, there's lots of people whose loyalties lie elsewhere, and we need to sort that out. People celebrate diversity. Diversity is division. What we need to celebrate is unity, getting everybody together, and that's what you saw originally in the United States. In the United States, the founding fathers, they saw diversity as a threat, so that's why everybody swore on the flag to be American, and somehow we need to do the same in Britain, so everybody swears the same and to be British.
Before I let you go, Mike, why have the number of people accidentally released from prison doubled under this Labour government?
Well, I think firstly with this government, they're not committed to people being in prison. They think that people in prison are victims of society. So they really do think that people in prison should be treated with kid gloves, and as a result of that, they get released early.
Yeah.
There's an incompetence about it, and also they're employing people. I was speaking to a friend who's a former prison officer. You have male prisons where you have to be 21 to be in that prison, and the people guarding them, the prison officers, are girls aged 18, and so that's one of the things that's a real problem. But the whole thing, there's no proper paper records. People are released when you go to the up to the wing. You say, right, can you find Mike Neville? So I say, I'm Mike Neville. I could be anybody really, and they bring me down to the section where you get interviewed, and I continue to say I'm Mike Neville, and I get released. There's no fingerprinting, no DNA taken before I'm released. It's just an utter mess. It's an administrative nightmare.
Lovely to have you on the show, Mike. Do come and see us again soon. Mike Neville served in the military and also is a retired Scotland Yard detective chief inspector. Did our war heroes fight in vain? Your call's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, the BBC crisis continues to rumble on, with Donald Trump waging a war against the BBC in regard to fake news after the editing of his speech. Well, I'm very excited because before 8, I'll be joined by the former BBC presenter and executive Roger Bolton, who used to produce Panorama. So that's coming up in just a moment. But a war veteran, aged 100, has revealed on ITV that he feels it was not worth fighting the battle that saw many of his closest friends lose their lives. So was it worth the fight? Daniel's in Epsom. Good morning, Daniel. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning, Mark. Great show.
Thank you.
I just want to say that the reason that this clip of the war veteran's gone viral is because virtually everyone, the people that interviewed him and virtually everyone that watched the interview knows that he's 100% right. If you look at our country today, if you think about 1951, the census showed us that 99.8% of the public were white, spoke English as a first language, and were broadly Christian. And in less than one man's lifetime, we're all in this country today that no one really ever wanted or asked for. We've got mass immigration from the third world, basically destroying the fabric of our own country. It's ruining the place. The towns and cities that we grew up in you can see the decline and degradation and the ghettoisation in front of you. You can see how, you've got over 72 million people trying to use an infrastructure fit for about 50 million people.
Yeah.
You can see that common decency and manners and politeness and things that queuing and things that I grew up with that were commonplace 2 generations ago are basically gone. And why do you fight a war? You fight a war for your freedom, for the longevity and happiness of your family, and for the great-great-grandchildren you'll never see. And now those great-grandchildren are in this country, which is a mess. And one of the biggest contributing factors to this mess is the fact that when you import millions of people from the third world, you basically become the third world. And it's been quite a quick change. And do you know what? No one ever voted for it. No one ever asked for it. We weren't, in actual fact, when we've been asked in votes for the past 30, 35 years, we voted against it, but we've had it shoved down our throats, and it's ruining our country. And I think the reason that his interview goes viral is because most people watching know he's 100% right. It's the same as Ryland Clark. That went viral when he mentions illegal immigration, because what he says chimes with the British majority, and what this World War veteran said also chimes, and it's the truth, and that's why it's gone viral.
Well, I agree. Many more of the normies are now speaking out. Claude, who is the assistant on The Apprentice with Alan Sugar, he posted a tweet just recently which equated mass immigration with the rise in crime in this country. And it feels like a moment when folk like Claude from The Apprentice and when Ryland Clark will speak out about what's happening to this country. And of course, no one's got more authority than this remarkable guy, Alec Penstone, 100 years of age, who fought for this country and said, was it worth it? No, it was not. Stay with me, Daniel, because I've got a message here from Linda, who says, good morning, Mark. Starmer, Khan, Lammy, etc. will be at this cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday, laying their wreaths at the side of the royal family. They are all hypocrites. Deanne says, Mark, back in the Second World War, the enemy lived on a different continent. Now the enemy live among us. And Terry in Slough says, hi, Mark, I'm 76. My father fought in the Second World War. If he was alive today and could see what politicians, both Labour and Tories, have done to this once great country, he would say, what the beep, beep, beep did I fight for? And Terry there, Daniel, speaking for millions.
Yeah, well, they are. I mean, I'm only speaking as someone who grew up in London. I'm only 48, but this is how quick the change has happened.
Yeah.
And it's happened against the majority's wishes. And if you're from... What used to happen is 20 years ago, 25 years ago, someone like me would talk about immigration and people would call me a racist and a fascist and far right. But what's happening now is all those people that were on the left a decade ago, 20 years ago, they're getting sexually harassed, they're having their phones stolen, they're getting beaten up, and they're coming around to our way of thinking. This has gone far too far. And I'll tell you what the proof will be in the pudding is the next chance that the British majority get to vote. So every election up until the general election, people in their swathes are going to vote for reform because they're our only hope. They're our last chance. And that's our last chance to reset and go, right, this has gone too far. We can see that there's a massive decline in the country. Everything's oversubscribed. Nothing publicly run works. Our children haven't got anywhere to live. We can see things getting progressively worse. We've imported FGM, honour killing, sham marriage, suicide bombing, the full veil, grooming gangs, violent gangs in our towns and cities. There are millions that will not assimilate. They don't want to be British. They don't like our way of life. And then, Mark, in my opinion, they've got to go. The reason that China will win the race, the global race that they'll end up winning, is because in China, everyone in the boat is rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
When you get to Britain, at the moment, everyone in our boat is rowing in different directions. They've got different ideas, different plans, different cultures. But the problem with multiculturalism, it told people that was okay, but it isn't. I never agreed to renege or get rid of the native culture of these islands, okay? And nobody did. And we need to have a huge reset. And that is why tens of millions are going to vote reform. And I personally can't wait, because I've got children and I worry for their future. And I'm sick to see what's happening to the UK. And it's all right for me, Mark, because I can leave. Like, I've got a good business, I've got a bit of money behind me, but it makes me feel sad. I look out every day, I'm filled with bitterness when I drive around London. I'm filled with bitterness because I'm looking at something that we didn't even want. We didn't even ask for this.
No.
But we've had it shoved down our throats, and it's got to stop.
Most definitely. And dare I say it, Daniel, London is not an English city anymore. Paul is in Liverpool and is a war veteran. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Mark. Hi, Mark.
Paul, you served in the forces. What do you make of Alec Penstone, who's a 100-year-old war veteran, saying it wasn't worth it?
Well, you might not believe me, but I had tears in my eyes. I definitely was really upset.
Yeah.
Phoning all my army mates, telling them about it. We don't need to talk about it. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
It's very, very embarrassing, humiliating. To be a soldier, and I could be dead now, and my friends, and we all did it for nothing, absolutely nothing. We need change. It's pointless name calling and pointing. Everyone knows that they're doing wrong. Immigration is a good thing. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But diversity isn't. And all the people coming over without documentation. I mean, we've got borders, and he's saying that we've got borders. We haven't. If you're letting people illegal into your country, undocumented, they're reinventing themselves, putting all our women and children and men, and even men, everybody's at risk. So what was the point in fighting against terrorism in countries like Northern Ireland? I mean, it was a waste of time. There's more of a threat here now. More of a threat. So why would you go into the army if all your family is going to be at risk? Because there's thousands of people coming over daily who are at risk to your family and your friends.
Well, that's right. People crossing in the boats, some of them have known terror links, and that's the problem. And it's a mystery, therefore, to someone like Alec Penstone, who put his life on the line, Paul, to protect the boundaries of this country, only to see them breached on a daily basis in the Channel. Where do we go from here? I mean, how do we address this so that Britain becomes a country worth fighting for again?
Well, for a start, every single person that's come here undocumented, whether they've been given a visa or not, it's irrelevant. They've reinvented themselves, they've come here illegally, and every single one of them has got to go. Every single one of them. All the hotels, all that hotels nonsense, and all they're getting cars and it's all got to stop. For people to feel like you've got a country that you'd fight for, you've got to feel like that you're first. You and your family and your friends are first, not people who are coming over without documentation, and they hate our country, they hate our values, and they're protesting all the time, corrupting everything, stealing. It shouldn't be happening. And if you react or speak up or say anything at all, you're the bad person, and you're the one that would probably get arrested.
Alec, before I let you go, can the Britain... sorry, you're Paul. Can Alec, Paul, can the Britain that Alec fought for, can it be reclaimed?
Yes, but everybody's got to stick together, and we have got to get rid of everybody that's come here illegally.
Paul, will you call me again soon, because I really enjoyed your contribution today, and can I salute you for your service to this country as a veteran as well. Paul in Liverpool, who I think speaks for so many viewers and listeners to the show. We're going to come back to this in Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. World War II veteran Alec Penstone tells ITV that it wasn't worth fighting for the country that Britain has become. I'll be tackling that in a very unapologetic Dolan's Dispatch at 8 o'clock. Make sure that you're there for that one. You won't want to miss it. But next up, Donald Trump is not happy with the BBC. He has launched a volley of furious words against the corporation. Trump goes to war on the Beeb is the headline of today's Daily Telegraph. We will bring reaction. This, of course, is in regard to the doctored speech, the edited speech that he made on January the 6th, which was clearly very misleading. The president's not happy. I'll get the reaction of a former Panorama producer of this show next.
All good at this end, apart from this rather disturbing poll that says 8 in 10 say the nation is divided now. That wasn't meant to be the order of events in the 21st century.
It certainly wasn't, and I was deeply troubled by the comment we had earlier by somebody who had literally fought for this country in the Second World War. And to think that those that gave their lives, those that risked their lives to fight for this great country, are now looking at the state that we're currently in and thinking, you know what, this wasn't worth it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast at 7:48 in the morning. A very busy couple of hours coming up. A World War II veteran, Alec Penstone, has surprised two presenters on ITV's GMB show by saying that the Britain of 2025 was not worth fighting for, that he has a degree of regret regarding his time in the military in the Second World War. Does he speak for you? 0344 499 1000 is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch in just 10 minutes' time. Plus, two individuals who are quite high profile that have served in the military. Ant Middleton, who is a Marines hero, and the former SAS man, the former Brexit Secretary, Sir David Davis, both joining us on the show before 10 a.m. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's White House has accused the BBC of purposeful dishonesty amid a row over bias at the broadcaster. It launched its attack over the way that the corporation selectively edited a speech made by the president, dismissing it as 100% fake news. British taxpayers, they said, were forced to foot the bill for a leftist propaganda machine, this according to Caroline Leavitt, Mr. Trump's press secretary. She delivered the verdict after the Telegraph newspaper disclosed that a Panorama documentary had spliced together different parts of a speech by Mr. Trump on January the 6th and made it seem as though he told supporters to go to the Capitol and fight like hell on the day of the 2021 riot. Well, let's get reaction now from a former presenter at the BBC and a former executive as well, and I believe a producer on Panorama, Roger Bolton. Roger, welcome to Talk.
Thank you.
It's good to see you this morning. What's your reaction to the editing of this clip on Panorama? How did it happen, do you think?
Well, I'd like to say that just to have the Trump White House accuse the BBC of 100% propaganda with their record of lying is quite extraordinary. When it comes to this particular incident, clearly, I watched the whole film. The film is fair. The editing of that particular moment is not. But the trouble is, they shouldn't have done. They should have put an indication that there was a time difference. But we're being misled here. A House of Representatives in the United States and the Senate voted that Donald Trump had indeed tried to stop the election results being recognized. And he called it the big steal. There were 7 Republicans on that committee. So let's look at the wider picture here. Donald Trump called it the big steal, was trying to stop Joe Biden being his election being confirmed. His own vice president, fortunately, refused to go with him and agreed and signed that, in fact, the election had been free and fair. In all the subsequent law cases or whatever, no evidence has been found at all. So the broader picture is that Donald Trump was trying to disrupt and, in fact, I won't say destroy, that's too much, but deny the American people their votes, their democratic results. That's the basic story. The tragedy about this situation is that a bad edit in an otherwise fair film allows people like Kathleen Levitt and so on to make these ridiculous assertions and allows a campaigning organisation against the BBC, and there are a number over a range of issues, to have a go at it again. Look at the facts, though. Check what Trump said. Continually encouraging people to come to Washington and the Capitol. Continuing using the word fight. That's the basic story. The sadness about this, and why it's really important, is that a single edit has allowed that basic fact to be distorted.
It was a bad edit, Roger, but it was a politically motivated edit, wasn't it? Because it sought to convince the viewer that Donald Trump incited this violence when he was crystal clear and absolutely made that point that he wanted the protest to be peaceful and patriotic, to paraphrase the president.
Can I say there are 2 things here? One is I don't know if it's politically motivated, but it was a mistake. But I don't know. I should doubt it because the rest of the film was fair. Donald Trump kept using terms like fight. Donald Trump was trying to get the election result, the fair election result, overturned. He was trying to get people to go to the Capitol. He was wanting them to stand out and put pressure on on the people who are going to vote within the Senate and the House of Representatives to push this through, the legitimate democratic wishes of the American people. He wanted to stop that. He used the words fight. He knew, by the way, the moment he got back into power, he pardoned everybody, over 1,000 people, who had been convicted of a fray and, in some cases, worse than that. Just look at the wider picture. I don't excuse.
But I understand the context, and you're right to establish that context. And I don't think that Donald Trump covered himself in glory on that day. Far from it. But this edit, it's profoundly misleading. It's bad journalism. It may or may not have been politically motivated. But it's not a good look for the BBC, which seeks to be the moral arbiter and, the most trusted news source in the world.
Well, that's true. But I think the other thing we should look at here, this country is, well, as you well know from your programme, is very divided on a whole range of issues. And on the question, for example, of the Middle East, there's a fierce propaganda war going on. And the Daily Telegraph, in particular, is very much pro-Israel. And there are a number of organisations on both sides, but their aim is propaganda. They believe passionately in their cause. Danny Cohen, for example, a former director of television at the BBC, is also runs the Centre for it's something like media monitoring, these innocuous titles and so on. Their job, because they passionately believe it, is to defend the state of Israel. There are others on the other side. The BBC, because it tries to represent all points of view and because it also tries to establish the facts, gets hit. It's like some of that old cliche. If you stand in the middle of the road, you get hit both ways. Well, the BBC's job is to stand in the middle of the road, and it goes both ways. The tragedy is when it makes a mistake like this in this propaganda world, then, it deflects attention from the fundamental problem. Look at the situation in the Middle East. Whatever you think about the rights or wrong, there are large numbers of Jews in this country and Jews in Israel deeply unhappy and ashamed of what Netanyahu government is doing. There are plenty of Muslims in this country deeply upset and angry about Hamas. But what we get is, the propaganda war, the polarization, and the BBC's job is to somehow separate facts from fiction, whatever. And on this occasion, it made a mistake, I believe, in the editing. And that's very sad for the BBC, but that's secondary. It's sad for the country, which needs to confront the basic facts, which are that Donald Trump, for example, I think, genuinely tried to destroy American democracy by denying the American people the right to have their votes properly recorded.
But with that bad edit, Panorama lose all of their credibility.
No, not all of it, because it loses some of it. But you look at some of the undercover reporting.
You can't believe the rest of the documentary if you've got an edit like that inside of it.
Yeah, hold on. Sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you talked about Panorama as a whole. It has damaged Panorama's reputation and credibility, but it continues to do excellent work. And look at the undercover work it's just done recently in exposing a whole raft of things. So I don't want to deny this has been extremely damaging, but it's damaging for two reasons. One is because of the mistake itself. It shouldn't have made it. But secondly, because it helps those who have this belief there's some overall BBC left-wing propaganda run from the top to deny you. Believe me, and you must know this, if you worked in the BBC or in Panorama, whatever, there are a range of competing voices. The idea that you can have a conspiracy on one side or the other, you can't. But when you have the country as divided as it is now, and people holding such passionate views, as your previous spokesman had on that awfully complex issue of immigration, how the hell do you stop the boats? If anybody, by the way, knew how to stop them easily and quickly, they'd have done it by now. The Tories would have done it, wouldn't they? Because it was under them, as it happens, that this went up.
Yeah.
It's difficult. People feel passionately, we're polarized, and normally in those circumstances we shoot the messenger. Well, the messenger shouldn't give people the opportunities of shooting them.
But that clip was fraudulent, wasn't it? It was a lie. It was dishonest.
No, it was not a lie in this sense. It wasn't.
Because it was profoundly misleading. It made it look like Donald Trump said, go to the Capitol and fight, fight, fight. It was a complete misrepresentation of what he said. No,
it wasn't a complete misrepresentation. It was wrong. And by putting together two pieces of a speech, 40 minutes apart, should have been very careful. We do that. We have to do that often because you have to condense things. They should have been aware what they were doing and the impression.
This wasn't condensing, Roger. You're a former top executive. This was not condensing. This was not for the efficacy of the edit. This misrepresented the remarks of the man that's currently the President of the United States, which places the whole of the BBC into great disrepute and is a big problem for the special relationship.
Well, I can't comment on that last point, but it is damaging. But, did Donald Trump continually use, I'm not defending this edit, make that clear, continually use the word fight, fight, fight. He encouraged people to come to Washington and go.
Well, fight, fight, fight. That can be a metaphor for protest,
it could
can't
be, but you know there are people in the White House who are begging him to make a statement to pull in the National Guard. He refused to pull in the National Guard until very late. There were his own lawyers, we now hear, were trying to get him to say various things because they feared that he was in danger of being prosecuted. He was taking things up to the line, nudge, nudge, fight, fight. What he wanted above all was to overturn a democratic election. Remember that. Don't excuse Panorama, but remember that. And remember also he used the terms fight, fight, fight continuously. Now, he can then stand back and say, oh, I didn't tell you to fight. Hold on. If you shout fire in a building, you've got a responsibility, and he has, which makes it all the more sad that all our discussions are about a single edit which shouldn't have been done, and the White House pretends and uses that as an excuse to say the BBC is 100% propaganda. That's daft. I mean, would you trust Donald Trump or the BBC to tell the truth. I know what I would choose.
Let me put it to my audience, 03444991000. As a veteran of live television and a former BBC executive, Roger, briefly, a few seconds if you can. Martine Croxall, newsreader, has a script which says pregnant people. She corrects it with an eye roll. Pregnant women. Your reaction to that story?
Well, it was a stupid script. It should never have been written, but she shouldn't have rolled her eyes. Imagine it the other way round. A script has said the opposite, and a newsreader rolls their eyes. Don't roll your eyes, and don't write daft scripts like that.
Roger, do join us again soon. A real delight to have you on the show, former BBC executive and presenter Roger Bolton. Next up, Dolan's Dispatch. 2025 Britain, was it worth fighting for? Don't go anywhere.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, the very top of the morning to you, it is 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mark Dolan, this is Talk Breakfast, and your weekend starts here. A big 2 hours to come as we remember our war heroes this weekend. Just what were they fighting for? In a clip from an ITV interview that's gone viral, a 100-year-old veteran has said it wasn't worth it because of the state of modern Britain. Well, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, we'll be joined by war hero and former Brexit Secretary Sir David Davis, and breaking news, Ant Middleton, who served in the Marines, star of Celebrity SAS, also joins us before 10 o'clock. Sir David Davis, Ant Middleton on the show. Was it all in vain? That is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch in just a couple of seconds' time. Meanwhile, the scandal over BBC impartiality worsens, with the US President Donald Trump blasting the corporation for editing his speech, misrepresenting what he said. What now for the BBC? Does the Director General, Tim Davie, have to stand down? Plus, mastermind himself, Justice Secretary David Lammy, has presided over a huge jump in the number of people released from prison accidentally. Why is it happening? And is this a crisis that threatens to engulf the Labour government? And a new poll puts Labour in 4th place, with the governing party of this country set for their worst election result in a century. Could this be the last ever Labour government? Plus, the cast of I'm a Celebrity has been revealed, but have you heard of any of them? I'll be joined by the bizarre editor at The Sun newspaper. And for today's Retro Rewind, in which we look back at a glorious year from the past, what year was it that Jerry Halliwell of the Spice Girls wore that Union Jack dress? All will be revealed. Now, my priority for the next 2 hours is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. My number is 0344 499 1000. Kushi is taking your calls right now. And you can text us. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. As the saying goes, let's talk. But as always, at this time on Talk Breakfast, we're going to do Dolan's Dispatch. This weekend...
What we fought for...
Okay, welcome, folks. It is live radio, it's live TV. And this is today's Dolan's Dispatch. This weekend, we remember the heroes of 2 world wars. They fought, they bled, they sweated, they battled, they flew, they detonated, they ran, they crawled. They sacrificed everything and they won. This weekend we salute them. We thank them. We are not worthy. There are, in fact, no words. For those who survived, for those who prevailed, and for those who fell, we are not worthy. But I fast forward from VE Day in 1945 to today and November the 8th, 2025. And I look at our chaotic, disordered country, ill at ease with itself, lawless, and no longer a community, no longer a society. At which point I have to wonder, what exactly were these brave men and women fighting for? Was the country we now have worth it? Well, I'm not alone in having those questions. A 100-year-old veteran shocked the hosts of Good Morning Britain this week by declaring that winning World War II wasn't worth it due to the state of the United Kingdom. Alec Penstone told Adol Ray and Kate Garraway how he quit his factory job to sign up for the Royal Navy and fight for his country as soon as he came of age. The war hero recalled serving alongside close friends, many of whom lost their lives, and he called himself just a lucky one for having survived. But you could have heard a pin drop when he said it wasn't worth it for the country that we have become today. Take a listen.
What we fought for, and what we fought for was our freedom. We find that even now it's downsight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
Now, the interviewers frantically tried to change the subject and paper over the cracks. I thought it was quite insulting, actually. I thought they treated him, as one of my callers earlier said, like a 5-year-old child, rather than a 100-year-old hero with all his faculties. And I got the feeling that the hosts tried to take over the conversation so that he didn't drop any more truth bombs. How ironic that the man interviewing him was Adil Ray, who just this week posted on the social media site X his enthusiasm for Sharia law. I wonder if the men who gave their lives and who risked everything in 2 world wars were fighting for parts of Britain to ultimately become a theocratic state. I suspect not. But this amazing man, Alec, still a brave fighter it turns out, took his opportunity brilliantly and got his point across. Because if you look at Britain in 2025, so much that was sacrificed by previous generations has been in a different way sacrificed by us, with open borders, with a bloated, ruinous welfare state, with an increasingly indulgent, consumerist, work-shy population that lacks discipline and lacks the kind of self-responsibility represented by Alec Penstone, with a woke war on our own values and our culture. And when it comes to mass immigration, with, for example, 1 in 25 Brits having arrived here in the last 5 years, what they fought for, the integrity of these islands, this community, this country, has been given away. And as they spilt blood to defend our geographical boundaries, now thousands pour into the country illegally every week. And these people get paid. They walk freely. They're housed at our expense. And the majority, even though they've broken the law, and we don't know who they are, stay. When brave men like Alex, some as young as 17 years of age, got in those tanks and climbed into those cockpits, when they shivered in rat-infested trenches, when they ran into a blizzard of bullets and crawled across filthy, muddy terrain, passing the bodies of enemies and friends alike, were they fighting for this divided and incoherent society that we now have? Were they fighting for aggressive men in face coverings, yelling slogans in another language on the so-called peace marches, and descending on Whitehall and the cenotaph, there to remember our war dead, cheering on a war in the Middle East? With the statue of Winston Churchill, our war hero, boarded up for its own protection as men from a different culture chant "Globalise the Intifada" and "Death to the IDF." Were people like Alec Penstone fighting for the names of underground stations in East London to be translated into a foreign language? Were they fighting for parallel communities, cultural ghettos, which are 1 million miles away from the old England of the last century? Were they fighting for social disorder with teenagers brandishing machetes in our once charming streets, cutting through bike locks with an angle grinder, snatching phones out of people's hands and the watches of people's wrists? Did they fight for a Britain where shop workers have to wear a body cam to capture on film the violence and aggression that they will inevitably face on a daily basis? Were they fighting for electronic tags on jars of Nescafe Gold Blend in Tesco and Co-op, and steaks stored in locked Perspex boxes, and staff flogging fags and booze from behind a wall of reinforced plastic for their own safety? Were they fighting for school teachers and university professors to teach our kids that Britain's history is shameful, and even a homeless ex-veteran sleeping rough on the streets is a beneficiary of white privilege? Did they fight for the racist and divisive policies of diversity, equity and inclusion, which sees the RAF, no less, banning the recruitment of white men, the kind of white men that fought on our behalf in the skies during the Second World War? Did the likes of Alex Penstone fight for a country where women and girls are less safe statistically as a result of those that we've imported into the country, illegally and legally too? Men with attitudes that are a world apart from the attitudes that British men in this country have towards women. Did they fight for a country that can barely be bothered to wear a poppy these days? I've seen fewer and fewer people wearing poppies. And you can barely see them in the supermarkets anymore. It's quite shocking, isn't it? No one seems to care. No one appreciates the sacrifice of people like Alex Penstone. And he now wonders whether the sacrifice was worth it itself. And you don't get the old geezers from the Royal British Legion shaking their tin anymore at train stations, probably because, as we saw last year in King's Cross, they get harassed and threatened by a pro-Palestinian mob. Did people like Alex Penstone, did he fight so that children could be told at school that there are 100 genders and that a little boy is trapped in a girl's body or vice versa, or that it's appropriate for a man to enter a female toilet or changing room because he thinks he's a lady today? Is that what they fought for, this insane, mad, unhinged country? And if we faced the kind of spine-chilling, goosebump-provoking peril that they faced in the last century, who would fight for this country now? A multi-ethnic society is not necessarily a problem, and sensible, productive immigration that we used to have, where you come here to work, speak the language and become British, well, that's not a problem. But the total failure of so-called multiculturalism is there for all to see, with no requirement to integrate, leading to vast swathes of the country not identifying as British at all. There are millions here that do not consider themselves British. Would they take up arms to fight for this place? No. They march the streets for other countries altogether. So good luck with that. And would you want to send your kids into the line of fire anyway, even if they did want to serve, to defend the UK in 2025? As we remember our war heroes of the past, we pray for their memory, we thank them, we salute them, we honour them. And as our crumbling society demonstrates, we must now battle to preserve the dying legacy of their sacrifice. Just as they fought in the war for what was under threat, so we must fight in peacetime again, through lawful protest, via platforms like this one, Talk, and through the ballot box. Because if we don't, the Britain that we once knew and loved will be lost forever. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. Chris is in Epsom. Chris, welcome to Talk. Good morning.
Morning, Mark. I've got a fair bit to say. I'll try and be quick. I'm a veteran. During the Second World War, my mother lost her father and two of his brothers. My grandmother lost two of her brothers. My aunt got married on a 24-hour special leave to her husband Frank, who left after 24 hours and never came back. I wore the uniform from 79 to 85 and was very proud to do so under the Thatcher years, when there was pride in this country and pride of what we had. I heard you mention Alex's interview this morning first thing.
Yeah.
So I actually turned you off and went and watched the whole interview twice. And I had tears in my eyes because you can't imagine the horrors that man went through to give us our freedoms, our freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, a high trust society. And it's now all being thrown out the window, right? And let me go on about the BBC, all right? You're, what's his name, Bolton.
Yeah, Roger Bolton,
right?
Former BBC executive.
All that is wrong with the BBC. He was the producer of Panorama in 79, when the parachute regiment in Northern Ireland caught the Panorama team paying kids off of a council estate to cover themselves in tomato sauce and say they got beaten by the military. Unfortunately for them, a patrol from B Company came round the corner and Panorama got a lesson they should have learned, but they didn't. They've gone on. You know, the John Sweeney thing. Have you seen that, where he plies a young girl with loads of alcohol, mixing the cocktail, saying, let's have loads of fun, the BBC are paying. And when he thinks she's lathered, he asked her to make up sexual allegations against Tommy Robinson, which she refused to do. And Tommy had very cleverly, because although they'd fallen out, his assistant and him, she was not disloyal. So she told Tommy that they wanted to interview her, so he'd mic'd her up and cameraed her, and it's on YouTube. And you can see Sweeney goes into panic mode, and all the producers are sat there, and their collective heads go in their hands because they know the game is up. They've been caught. Now, as for the Trump thing, all right, I've never been a massive fan of Trump. I wanted to like him because I wanted to believe that he was going to do what he said he was going to do. And I do believe that his first 2 years as the 45th president were mucked up because he didn't know the system, he didn't get the right people in place. But when I watched, and it wasn't just on Panorama, that was played on BBC News. When I watched that, I thought, what? The guy's trying to an insurrection, an uprising against the democracy. And I changed my mind on Trump, and I went along with the lawfare on him. And now I've seen that. And do you know what I've done this morning? I've written an email to Trump and said that if he wants proof, because that was played before the election, that could have damaged his chances and it was defamatory and all the rest of it, I've written to him and said that exactly what I've just told you, and I'd be happy to give evidence against the BBC that they turned my mind against Trump with that absolutely abominable edit for which the editors and the producers, the top man has to go. He's gone, right? He's sat over a pile of brown stuff for a long time. But the producers and the editors, the people that had their fingers on the buttons, that made that cut, that, in my mind, is illegal.
Chris, what a brilliant point, and thank you for your passion across a range of topics. Do call me again soon. Did our war heroes die in vain? More on this next.
all good at this end, apart from this rather disturbing poll that says 8 in 10 say the nation is divided now. That wasn't meant to be the order of events in the 21st century.
It certainly wasn't, and I was deeply troubled by the comment we had earlier by somebody who had literally fought for this country in the Second World War. And to think that those that gave their lives, those that risked their lives to fight for this great country, are now looking at the state that we're currently in and thinking, you know what, this wasn't worth it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
I want to get to some big royal stories in just a moment because there's a massive story on the front page of the Sun newspaper about Andrew and Fergie. But this is a massive story that's really kicked off. It was the subject of today's Dolan's Dispatch, and it's the 100-year-old World War II veteran Alec Penstone who told ITV that the fight wasn't worth it for what Britain has become. Well, a big reaction to Dolan's Dispatch. June, well done, Mark. Excellent. Everything you said is right. Talk, sort of just an unknown texter there. Great speech, Mark. Said it all. Excellent monologue, Mark. The veteran was 100% correct, but unfortunately the country's finished. There's no way back, and what's more upsetting is that all of this is the fault of a few hundred politicians, past and present. Linda in Deal, thank you, Mark, for a brilliant monologue. You speak the truth from the heart. You said how millions of us feel. Well done, says Roger in Nottingham. And finally, another unnamed texter. Well said, Mark. My father and his friends never fought for the England of today. Much better without waving your arms around like a windmill. Yeah, well, thank you for that. Listen, I'll get to more of your messages shortly. But let's get reaction from the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Charlotte, good morning. Good to see you. We'll get to Prince Andrew and Fergie in just a moment. But your reaction to that ITV clip of a war veteran saying it wasn't worth the fight?
I know, it's so sad, isn't it? I do honestly think about veterans a lot when I look out onto the streets and I just see people shoplifting openly, knives. And my grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, and I just think, thank goodness, because, you know, he did start to get worried in his final years, actually. And he used to really worry about me and the kids kind of being out on the streets because he was, of course, watching the news and just seeing how really, in the last 5-10 years, but also across his lifetime, the country's just changed so much. I mean, he really didn't recognise it anymore. And he lived in Golders Green as well. I mean, I'm glad he's not around for what goes on there, which is, you know, they've got the whole, the Jewish people and the Palestinians. It's really sad. And I think for people of an older generation as well, they don't have social media, they don't have TikTok, and they don't have Twitter, so they don't understand this polarising influence that we all see. In fact, a lot of older people and veterans are completely baffled because they have tea or lunch or dinner with their grandchildren and they're just staring at their phones the whole time. Yeah. And they, of course, don't have a phone to stare at, or aren't, you know, they're not really as prone to staring at iPads for hours at a time, so they're just looking out into the distance. And little do they know that everyone, really, from every walk of life, is being kind of radicalised by this really extreme, opinionated Twitter and TikTok stuff that goes on.
Most definitely, it's a real concern, isn't it? Well, listen, let's get to the royal family because you're the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, which specialises in royal scoops. And we've got the front page splash of the Sun. Royal Dodge. Disgraced Andrew Windsor is spending his last weeks at Royal Lodge ranting to himself as ex-wife and fellow resident Sarah Ferguson pours out her heart to staff at a secret bar called the Doghouse. Do we know what kind of frame of mind Andrew and Fergie are in at the moment?
Well, I do know that Fergie people are actually worried about her. She's in such a bad frame of mind. And I also found out that Andrew, and I think it's in this piece a bit, but Andrew finally, and it's taken a monumental Herculean fall from grace, but Andrew is finally starting to appear less arrogant, apparently, behind the scenes, and is starting to catch a tiny glimpse of what the rest of us would call humility and self-awareness. But Fergie, people are actually worried about. I think her mental health is really at a low ebb. As you say, she goes drinking at the Doghouse, her pub. I know the girls are kind of, they want to freeze their parents out. They're cross with their parents, they're angry with their parents, but equally, they have stayed in touch because they're genuinely so worried about where their mental health is at. And in a way, I don't have sympathy for them. I think that's the wrong word. But imagine what it must be like, kind of trapped in your house, knowing you've got literally nothing for the rest of your life. Nothing. No social engagements, royal life titles, nothing. So it's a very daunting future for them.
It most definitely is. Now, Andrew's laughing all the way to the bank, isn't he? Because this deal that he brokered with King Charles means that he'll stay in Sandringham for see out his years on the Sandringham estate. There's a degree of security there because it's a royal set of properties, and the accommodation will be bankrolled by the King. The same can't be said for Fergie, who's homeless and not swimming in cash by the looks of it.
Yes, she's hoping some sort of generous benefactor will take her in. But the thing is, that's been happening now for 30 years. She must have run out of people. And we know she did run out of people because that's why she was tapping up Epstein all the time. So people are worried about where she's going to go. There was some talk she might go to the UAE or Dubai because she's done America. She's obviously done the UK high society and nobody will take her in there. But then there's the worry about security, that apparently she's very, very paranoid at the moment. And she thinks she'll be targeted, or maybe Andrew will be. She believes there are dark forces out there. It's really got echoes of the Princess Diana era. And of course, there have been a lot of suicides and deaths around the whole Epstein saga. So she's worried that if she goes abroad, will she have security? And indeed, if she stays in the UK, will she have security? But she's not going Sandringham with Andrew. You know, that their kind of strange together but separated arrangement will come to an end. And they're living on opposite ends of Royal Lodge at the moment, and they just come together occasionally for drinks and dinner.
Does the fragile peace between the two of them suggest that actually, maybe they've fallen out now? I mean, do we know about the state of their actual relationship? Are they still on reasonable terms, do we know?
I think they are still on reasonable terms, and Fergie is worried about Andrew and still thinks he's an honourable and good man, and that's what came across in the Sun piece. But I just don't know if they will remain close after this. Then again, they don't really have any other friends. They have some remaining friends, but mostly live and frozen out by everyone and, of course, by their own families. So really, all they have is each other and the girls. So I definitely don't think they're as close as they used to be. But I think it's not totally, they haven't totally fallen out, I'd say.
Fergie is obviously the world's most famous sofa surfer. She sold her Mayfair property at a £400,000 loss, having purchased it as an investment just a few years ago, which would suggest financial problems or certainly cash flow issues. She can't afford to retire, can she, and see out her days in leisure. Is there still a chance that she could do a tell-all book, Fergie, My Story, and make millions?
I think there's every chance, because her children's books have been stripped from the shelves. They're due to be out this week or next week, I think. That was her latest money-making scheme, another set of children's books. Obviously, they're not going to come out now, so I think she'll write another autobiography. The problem is she's done many of those. She's done many Oprahs. There's nothing really we don't know about Fergie. She's pretty an open book. So I'd probably find it quite interesting to buy a book by Fergie at this point, but I don't know if people would be rushing.
But do you not think that she's had one hand tied behind her back because of the protection of her princess daughters and her reasonable friendship with Prince Andrew? Do you not think that there is a no-holds-barred, warts-and-all tell-all story waiting to be shared with the world?
Well, so she could go kamikaze, couldn't she? I don't think it's in her to do that. But you're right, actually. If she's not protected by Royal Lodge and she's got no skin in the game being kind about the royal family, she could take them down. She never has done before. She's always remained so loyal to them. And she might think, well, if I've got any chance of having the odd shekel thrown my way, perhaps I shouldn't.
Well, she knows where the bodies are buried, doesn't she?
Certainly for Andrew and all his circuit and circle friends and the Epstein era, she does know where all the...
And Charles's treatment of Diana, given the fact that she and Diana were close back in the day.
Okay, now Mark, you're putting actually a very good case forward. Maybe she should do the 80s tell-all, what really happened behind the scenes.
The problem is it would be a scorched earth policy, wouldn't it? And her daughters would never forgive her. So it's a fascinating one. Listen, always enjoy the royal exclusives at the Mail on Sunday. Charlotte, do chat again to us soon, please. Charlotte Griffiths is the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday. A World War II veteran, Alex Penstone, has revealed to ITV that he doesn't think that the loss of his friends and colleagues and his own battle in the Second World War was worth it, given the state of Britain in 2025. More on that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A World War veteran called Alex Penstone has said to ITV that it wasn't worth fighting in World War II because of what Britain has become. This from John in Liverpool. Good morning, Mark. Chris, the caller, stands out to me. What a great lot of callers you've had on the show today. Every one of them have gotten better and better. The knowledge, the facts, the awareness that I get from the show whenever I watch or listen is huge. Well, John, thank you for that. That's why we prioritise calls and texts on this show, because you guys get it. You are awake, you have the knowledge, you have the wisdom, and I've got to say it's always the highlight of every show when we put calls to air. And Mary, Elizabeth, Bob, Justin, Dave, Jim, Malcolm and Anne are all waiting to join the conversation in just a moment. Michelle says, Mark, the best Dolan's dispatch I've watched so far, gave me goosebumps. We are in a battle for our lives once again. The enemy is here. Well, let's get reaction to this story now from a good friend of mine, former Labour advisor, and I think potentially at some point a prospective parliamentary candidate for the Labour Party, Susie Stride. Good morning, Susie.
Good morning.
It was a very moving interview, wasn't it, on ITV with this chap, Alex Penstone, who's got a degree of buyer's regret having served in the Second World War. And it's hard to disagree with his assessment about the broken nature of our society.
Look, I think it's really important, isn't it, that there are lots of things that are not as we want them to be at the moment in this country. And I mean, I'm someone that is, you know, incredibly patriotic, and I love this country, and I actually believe this is the best country in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm happy to say this, that, you know, we had a conservative government for many, many, many years, who did not invest, who didn't invest in public services. In fact, the opposite happened. Youth clubs closed, massive cuts to the NHS, you know, massive cuts to regeneration projects, infrastructure projects. If you have that over a long period of time, that is going to damage a country, and that is what we're dealing with now. And so I wouldn't call us broken, because actually I think there's so many great things about this country, you know, but there is a long way to go, and there's a lot of rebuilding that needs to happen.
And do you think also he laments the consequences of mass unchecked immigration and illegal immigration? Because I would say, Susie, that the majority of my viewers and listeners are quite comfortable with the sort of sensible levels of immigration that we've had for decades following the Second World War, where people came here to become British, follow the law, contribute, work, and make a great positive impact on the country. But the kind of immigration that we've had in, you know, recent years has been of a very different flavour.
Yeah, I mean, I think he represents there are concerns. Clearly, look, one of the key things on the doors, so I knock doors obviously for the Labour Party, to speak to members of the public to see what are their concerns, and one of the key things on the doors is about immigration, and so we can't ignore that. And, you know, ultimately we do need controlled immigration. We do, you know, we need immigration which is going to help the economy, you know, those jobs that actually British people don't want to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But actually there's been levels of immigration which are not good. But again, I would say that under the Conservatives, immigration went up.
Sure.
You know, because of Brexit, immigration went up because the partnerships that we had with France, etc., you know, fell apart. And so you know, this is something that we do need to get to grips with. But I think Yvette Cooper is, you know, over time, and this is the really, really important thing, you can't have quick fixes. There aren't quick fixes. We all want quick fixes, but, you know, things like this take time.
Well, obviously the public do want a quick fix when it comes to illegal immigration, Susie. I know it's complicated, but somebody that says that he will have the boat stopped within days of winning power is Nigel Farage, and he's now on 33% in the polls, up 1 point on the last poll. That's Reform UK on 33%, with Labour now having an historic low of being in fourth place at 15%. Is the party now facing an existential crisis?
No, not at all. Sorry. You know, we're 1 year in, and, you know, I think the media, as far as I'm concerned, we've got a very dominant right-wing media across this country.
But what about the BBC and Sky and The Guardian and the Mirror newspaper? All of those are left-leaning. That's most of the media, isn't it?
No, not at all.
The
sorry.
newspaper, The Independent.
No, not at all. Sorry, you've got. I wouldn't say Sky News is left-leaning at all.
Oh my God, it's crazy work.
You've got the Mail, you've got the Telegraph, you've got the Sun. But anyway,
the Sun and the Sunday Times both backed Labour for the election in July of last year.
The vast majority of the press and media in this country are 100% right wing. Yes, we have. You've got the Mirror newspaper.
Wait, the Sun said vote Labour in July of last year, as did the Sunday Times, and the Times said, well, we don't like any of them, so we can't recommend anyone.
I would say over the last year, okay, you've got the Mirror, you've got kind of the BBC. But no way. I mean, you've got Sky, you've got GB News, you've got the Telegraph, you've got the Mail on Sunday, you've got the Express. All of these are just like they're completely against the Labour Party. But anyway, just coming off that for a moment, when it comes to the polls, look, you can't. There's no point pretending here. The Labour Party are not in a great place, and there's a number of reasons for that. However, do they face an existential crisis? No way. Let's just remember that because of the Tories, kids were learning in porta cabins. NHS waiting times went through the roof. We had sewage being pumped into our rivers and seas. Uncontrolled immigration went up under them. Now, you can't turn that around in a year, but as time goes on over the coming years now, I do believe the Labour government are going to begin to turn this around. I do believe that there is going to be far more positive stories. And I do believe that actually the polls are going to reflect that.
What's that going to look like? Where is growth going to be in, let's say, a year's time? Because we had 0.1% growth in the last quarter, which is as low as you can have without a recession.
But we've also had record investment. We've had record in trade with America. We are investing
thanks to Brexit.
We are investing in infrastructure in the way. Look, this is the thing. If you don't invest in infrastructure, then basically this is what happens. And again, this is for me, the 14 years of Conservatives, it's just logical, isn't it? You can't turn that round in 1 year. Liz Truss and her disastrous budget, and I do want to say this.
Not as bad as the November, the last October's budget. The Halloween budget was far worse.
It is really important to say that there are people in this country that are struggling because of that Liz Truss budget.
Because of Rachel Reeves, yeah.
No, because of Liz Truss's budget and people's mortgages going through the roof. People are struggling and suffering.
We have to kind of put this in context, because Rachel Reeves's budget, or after her October Halloween budget, the cost of government borrowing was higher than it was under Liz Truss in the aftermath of the mini budget. The bottom line is, look, Susie, we're old mates, but I've got to tell you, I think you're insulting the intelligence of my viewers and listeners by talking about the so-called right-wing press, right? It doesn't matter what newspaper or TV network is observing the current situation. Unemployment's up, inflation is up, the debt is up, growth is down, the country's going into the toilet, all as a result of this Labour government.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to agree with you on that. I'm not going to agree with you.
Those are all facts.
I'm going to. So,
this isn't fake news like woke Sky.
Here's another classic thing. We have 1 million young people unemployed in this. Now, I need to say it's really important. A million young people unemployed in this country. When Labour was last in government, we were bringing those numbers down. The Tories came in and they scrapped the Future Jobs Fund. They scrapped youth inclusion programs. They scrapped loads of the upskilling that those young people needed. We've come in, we're going to invest massively in apprenticeships. Now, when you think about that, when you think about those 1 million young people, you can't turn that round in a year, but give it a few years.
Don't talk to me about young people when the Nix tax rate has destroyed hospitality, which predominantly employs people under 30. Pubs, restaurants, hotels, bars, they're laying people off, school leavers, graduates who need a job, all because of Rachel Reeves's inability to cut public spending. And of course, the consequences of that Halloween nightmare budget. That's why people are struggling, and that's why people are angry. Susie Stride.
Look, I'm not saying, let's be honest, the country is not where it needs to be.
I mean, even Tony Blair, is now criticising his Labour government. You've got Tony Blair saying that the workers' rights package is going to destroy growth and kill investment and cause unemployment. The Resolution Foundation, which is Labour's favourite left-wing think tank, said that actually Angela Rayner's workers' rights plan must be paused. This is not the right-wing press.
What I'm saying is, and I'll say this again, this country, for me, is like, a great ship. And it was being pushed into the wrong waters for too long. You can't turn that round in 1 year. It's just not going to happen. However, we are investing in infrastructure programs. We have record levels of investment coming into this country. We're going to have a massive house building program, over 1 million houses being built. We're bringing down NHS waiting lists, which is absolutely crucial.
Very
you
slowly.
Can't have a healthy economy. You can't have a healthy economy without having a healthy population. We're investing in education in the way that the Tories didn't. Now, do I think at the moment everything is going well? No, of course not. I'm not going to pretend.
That's nice. That's
do
good of
I
you.
do I think things are going to get far better under Labour? 100%. 100%. Do I think we're facing an existential crisis? No. Not at all.
Susie, always a treat to have you on the show. Great to see you again, and do join us very, very presently on Talk, because it's interesting what you have to say. Susie Stride there, former Labour advisor, who says that this government are facing challenges, but they will turn it around. Thank you, Susie. Enjoyed that chat. Next up, a World War II veteran, Alec Penstone, has said it wasn't worth fighting in Second World War. Your reaction, your calls next.
Good at this end, apart from this rather disturbing poll that says 8 in 10 say the nation is divided now. That wasn't meant to be the order of events in the 21st century.
It certainly wasn't, and I was deeply troubled by the comment we had earlier by somebody who had literally fought for this country in the Second World War. And to think that those that gave their lives, those that risked their lives to fight for this great country, are now looking at the state that we're currently in and thinking, you know what, this wasn't worth it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A World War II veteran, Alec Penstone, surprised ITV presenters this week by saying that fighting in the Second World War was not worth it because of what Britain has become in 2025. Here's the clip.
Well, what we fought for, was our freedom. We find that even now it's downsight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
So was his battle in vain, and did those who gave their lives for this country in the Second World War do so for no good reason? Let's speak to Justin in Sheffield. Good morning, Justin. Welcome to Talk.
Right there, Mark.
Now, Justin, I think you take issue with what Alec Penstone and I have had to say. Tell me more.
Well, right, now let's just examine what would have happened if we'd have lost the Second World War and the Germans had won, right? We'd have the Gestapo telling us what to do, concentration camps on the end of the roads, most of the working age men shipped off to Germany for slave labour. Talk radio is a bit obsessed with anti-Semitism at the moment. Something
and rightly so.
Exaggerate. Well, personally, I think it's vastly exaggerated in this country. But anyway, let's not get sidetracked. And all the Jews would have been shipped off to Poland, and they wouldn't be coming back.
Justin, I think we're all agreed that it's good that we won the Second World War, and I think it's definitely agreed that Alec did not fight in vain, and others did not give their lives in vain. Of course not. This was fascism. It was Hitler, one of the worst monsters in history. No one is saying that. But I think Alec has a heavy heart about what Britain has become and feels that sacrifice was unjustified given how lawless and chaotic our country now is.
Well, I have to say I don't particularly like the modern world for a whole load of reasons, but to suggest that it would have been in any way better had we not won the war. I mean, I just think
I don't really think, Justin, that's what he's saying, though. He's making a point that the Britain he fought for has disappeared. One where it was a coherent society, it was a community, everyone making a contribution, doing their bit. We had law and order. Britain was a much better place in 1945 than it is now.
Well, I'm not sure it was a better place than it was in 1945, but I would personally accept that the 1970s and the 80s were a far better time to live than they are now. You wouldn't find me arguing with that.
And why do you think that is? What's changed, Justin?
I think the 1970s and the 1980s were a freer time. They were a simpler time. People could do what they want. The absolute madness that occurred during COVID wouldn't have happened in the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s.
Yeah.
We basically live in what I call a progressive authoritarian world, where people who have got like a progressive outlook on life, they want to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Right. But the only way they can do that is by telling other people how to live their lives and restricting their freedoms. Progressive authoritarianism is what I call it, and that is the overwhelming credo of most parties.
Justin, you are so right. The Uni Party, I agree with every syllable of that, and you've made a lot of great points today, so please call me again soon, will you? Justin in Sheffield there, who does make the important point that it is good that we won the Second World War, but I don't think that's the exact nuance of what Alec Penstone was saying. But thank you for that, Justin. Anne is in Sussex. Good morning, Anne. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
Hope I'm not saying the wrong thing.
Anne, you can't say the wrong thing. I want truth bombs from you this morning, OK?
All right, bless you. Thank you. And there are a couple of big issues for me. One is those organisations that were set up under what was a very Christian caring society, the British Legion, the Red Cross, and many others I could name, that have closed they've closed their day centres.
Yes.
Closed their training buildings that they all had. They've become very big. I can think of quite a few organisations that have done that, while mainly it seemed they concentrated on money, head offices in London. But those veterans used to go along to those day centres. They would be cared for. They could have a meal. They could socialise. Their benefits were sorted out. And when we look at the homeless women on our streets, we've become a less caring society. It isn't only governments. It is many others in our country that have failed us. And the big thing that you were saying earlier about the 1940s, well, there's been a big push that we have all fallen into. We've gone into sleepwalking into the fact that those who are working against us actually have, you know, they've got in the schools, the colleges, the universities, and they've changed the thinking of people who once cared about our country, because actually it's communism and people working against us. And I'm really upset about that, because I am a grandmother, and it's what kind of world are we leaving for the next generation, who are being programmed in schools not to think, not to be critical, not to question.
Most definitely. And at schools, Nigel Farage is being compared to Adolf Hitler and Stalin, even though he's a democratically elected politician, and frankly quite a moderate one at that. Many would argue Nigel's not nearly radical enough. And they're being told that there are 100 genders, that you're trapped in the wrong body, and that you've got something to be ashamed of if you have white skin. And the other thing they're saying, Anne, is that our history is shameful. And briefly, Anne, our history is not shameful, but the future doesn't look great, does it?
Well, it doesn't if we carry on like this. But if people are listening really care and really think that our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents who did everything to fight for this nation, valued this country, they've got to wake up. And
there you go. A wake up is it. You said all the right things, Anne. Call me again soon. More on this next.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. And many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
3 minutes past 9. The top of the morning to you. I'm Mark Dolan. This is Talk Breakfast. Your weekend starts here. A big hour to come as we remember our war heroes this weekend. Just what were they fighting for? Well, that was the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch, which is already going viral on YouTube. Check it out. But in a clip from an ITV interview, well, this has gone viral too. A 100-year-old veteran has said it wasn't worth it because of the state of modern Britain. Well, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, we'll be joined by former veteran himself and ex-Brexit Secretary Sir David Davis. Joins us on the show this hour. Plus, we've got the former Marine himself, Ant Middleton. Of course, he's one of the presenters or ex-presenters of Celebrity SAS. Is also joining us. He's a mayoral candidate for London. Ant Middleton and Sir David Davis on this patriotism row in this hour. Talking of rows, the scandal over BBC impartiality worsens, with the United States President Donald Trump blasting the corporation for editing his speech and misrepresenting what he said. He's now calling our national state broadcaster the fake news BBC. So, is the game up for the Director General, Tim Davie? And more bad headlines for Sir Keir Starmer as a new poll places Labour fourth and set for their worst election result in a century. Is this the beginning of the end of the Labour Party? And the cast of I'm a Celebrity has been revealed, but have you heard of any of them? I'll be joined by the bizarre editor at the Sun newspaper, who's got the inside track. And my priority for the next hour is to get your opinions on the national television and radio airwaves. 03444991000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can hear us on the radio. We're in-app, we're online, and you can watch the show. Just head to YouTube and search Talk, and up we pop. And as the saying goes, let's talk. And it's a story which has dominated today's conversation, and it is the 100-year-old World War II veteran Alec Penstone, who surprised Adel Ray and Kate Garraway, the presenters of GMB on ITV this week, when they asked him a softball question about having served in the military, having fought in World War II, and his answer was that it wasn't worth it. Take a listen.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
What do you mean by that, though? At this point?
What we fought for, and what we fought for was our freedom. We find that even now it's darn sight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
Well, for reaction, I'm joined in the studio by the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. Kate, a really powerful interview. It's gone viral for good reason. This man speaks with authority because he put his life on the line. He's got friends that he lost in the Second World War, and he's wondering, what was it all for, given the direction of the country? This is a view that will be shared by plenty of your readers at The Sun on Sunday.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's just so sad to hear that view, because this is Remembrance Weekend. We'll mark Remembrance Sunday this weekend. And it's just so tragic to hear someone who sacrificed so much, who many of his comrades and friends died in that war, making the ultimate sacrifice for our country, now feeling that it wasn't worth it. I think he speaks to a broader anger, frustration, unease that it's felt in most of this country at the moment about the direction of travel. That's a very poignant human kind of response to what's going on. Earlier in the week we had a big sort of social study which actually laid bare the same thing, which was that people feel very divided, that they think the country is going to be going in the wrong direction, that they fear their children will be worse off than they are. And I think that's this kind of unease and frustration that he's speaking to.
Most definitely, and I think that's why it's gone viral, not by accident. And this isn't about racism or xenophobia or any of those things. Most of your readers, right, the majority of my viewers and listeners don't have a problem with sensible, well-integrated immigration, which we've had for decades very successfully. What we've had in perhaps the last couple of decades is a scale the likes of which we've not seen in our history, and there's definitely, that's got to be an element of it, is our sort of rapidly changing society that people feel they didn't vote for.
I think there's a few things that have gone on in the past 10, 20 years that are really, they're coming home to roost now. One is our really stagnant economy. It is just true that if you are in work today, working full time, be it kind of straight out of school or graduate level, you are not getting the money, the security, the chances that the generation before you was. So that is coming home to roost. Also, we've had, in very recent years, really, really high levels of immigration and this big problem with illegal immigration, which just fuels this sense of unfairness, which is toxic, and also this sense that the government, previously the Tories, now Labour, can't control what goes on in this country, and that's the really dangerous feeling out there for whatever politician is in power.
That's right, and people will watch Alec, who spoke very well and very movingly on ITV this week, and they will think, well, he did his part to protect the national boundaries of this country, which is something that the Conservatives and this current Labour administration are failing to do. Malcolm is in Devon. Good morning, Malcolm.
Morning, how's things?
I'm very well. I'm delighted you've called the show. What's your reaction to the remarks by Alec Penstone, this veteran of 100 years age, who said it wasn't worth fighting in the war? What do you think?
Well, I'm a 22-year veteran that fought more recent wars, Bosnia, Kosovo, Iraq. He is the person that I respect. He is the reason I joined the army, and along the lines of what he stands for, is the values that I stand for and I stood for when I joined the forces. And your dispatch was spot on. Would I fight for these utter buffoons? And by God, I'm really having to think hard about not swearing. Would I fight for these utter buffoons in charge? No, not at all. They're giving away elements of our country. They're letting all these people in. They're changing everything I know about the great that's in Britain and the blighty that I always wanted to come home to. I used to get off the planes or the trains after coming from some war zone, twice in Iraq, twice in Kosovo, twice in Bosnia, and 4 years in Northern Ireland over a 2-year tours. And I'd come back to Blighty, and I'd be in Devon or Wiltshire, where I was from, and I just loved it. Now, I don't recognise the place. I've told all my kids to get out of here while the Labour government are in charge, because they are going to lose everything that they know. And the Conservatives before them were just as weak.
Just as bad, I know, and the Boris wave and the boats all happened on the watch of the Conservatives. I mean, Malcolm, is there any way that the Britain that Alec fought for in the Second World War can be reclaimed?
We all know the answer to that one. That's yes. Get Labour out. Don't let the Conservatives back in. Get Nigel in. Give them a chance. People say he's right-wing. Well, yeah, compared to the far, far, far left going round in circles at the moment and the patheticness of this country that we've come to in the last year or two, we need somebody in who's going to get back what we all know and respect and we've worked hard for. I mean, I've got my own business now. I started up my own business at 59 or 58. Over the last year, I've had to take a £200 pay cut in paying myself money because of what Rachel Thieves has done. And now, God knows what's going to happen in a week or two's time. And all that time, tomorrow I'm going to get out with my medals, make them all nice and shiny, put my old Barry on, and I'm going to get out and I'm going to sort of respect all those guys that didn't come back and all the guys that I know during the conflicts that I've been involved in that didn't come back. And I've still got that, but that's going. There's going to be probably some people there with some blue hair or some stupid kids think they know the right way of doing it. Well, if they'd have stood with me in those trenches and run out of bullets with their bloody boots melting, then they wouldn't be doing their hair pink or blue.
Malcolm, before you go, whoever becomes next Prime Minister, if it is Nigel Farage or someone else that's intent on changing the country for the better, what levers do you want to see pulled? What needs to happen to save Britain?
We need change. We need to stop these people coming in that we don't know. I mean, Aston Villa in this Maccabi football, what the hell is that about? Why are we stopping people coming in? Because a nation of people who are the first generation of whatever, how can we stop them? Why are we flying Palestinian flags? Why are we not able to fly the Union flag, the flag of St. George? Why are we not able? I can't get it. if these people are so stuck on Palestine, bugger off to Palestine. Go away.
Very much, Malcolm. Thank you so much for a very important call. Please call me again soon. Malcolm served in the forces and completely echoes the sentiment of Alec Penstone, who's 100 years of age and has buyer's regret regarding his contribution to the Second World War. Now, the point, Kate, is that no one's saying that Britain shouldn't have won the Second World War. We're deeply grateful that you've got the likes of Malcolm who continue to serve in this country, and Alec did it back in the day. But that's not really the conversation. It's not about defeating Germany, is it? It's about what we've done with the legacy of sacrifice from people like Alec.
Yeah, of course it's not about whether or not anyone should have fought in that war. It was an absolutely crucial war to fight. I think everyone would accept that. It's where we're going now. What leadership does this country have? What does the government, the Prime Minister of this country, what do they want to do with the reins of power? How can they restore control to our borders? Because, you know, actually, whatever political view almost you have on migration, legal, everyone must agree that it needs to be controlled and legal. Yeah. You know, this idea that the boats just wash up and there's nothing we can do about it, nothing we can do to stop them arriving, nothing we can do to stop them here. That's what's breeding this real fury. When you hear it among your listeners, we see it in our paper with our readers, this real fury and this sense that we're in decline and not in control.
Yes, and it takes a 100-year-old to spark that national conversation. Does this feel like a moment politically?
I think that Britain, I mean, this is probably said too much, but I think we are at such a crossroads. And you see that with conversations like that on the ITV, but also you see it kind of in political polls, the Tories having given it a go and being chucked out, Labour being elected on such a landslide, and already they're tanking in the polls. You mentioned earlier that in one survey has them fourth. And now Nigel Farage, you know, a man kind of who's been certainly influential in politics, but not a leader of a major political party for 20 years, now suddenly looking like he could be the next Prime Minister.
It's pretty remarkable times. Well, listen, all of this is going to dominate tomorrow's Sun on Sunday.
Sorry, say that again.
All of this, yeah. It would help if I actually spoke clearly. All of this will be in tomorrow's paper.
Yes, exactly. Obviously, a big paper for us tomorrow, paying respects to our fallen soldiers with the remembrance coverage, and also looking again at the migrant issue.
Listen, we always love having you in the studio, Kate, and I hope to see you in a week's time. The Sun on Sunday's esteemed political editor is Kate Ferguson. We've also got, which we need in this crazy, crazy world, we need a bit of light relief, which is what football's all about. And I'm delighted to say that the Premier League is back and we've got some big, big games today. Gary Stonehouse is the North East and Yorkshire football editor at The Sun. Hi, Gary.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. What fixtures are you excited about today?
Well, I'm really excited for the big one, Sunderland v Arsenal. I'll be heading to the Stadium of Light this afternoon.
Up the Mackhams!
Exactly. They've had such a great start to the season, but Arsenal are looking unstoppable at the moment, never mind conceding. No one can even get a shot against them as it stands. But we've seen what the Stadium of Light's like. The atmosphere is going to be incredible. And I tell you what, there will fancy the chances of sending Mikel Arteta back down to London with his tail between his legs.
Well, here's hoping. Yes, any other fixtures worth keeping an eye on?
Well, you would usually say Tottenham versus Man United would be, but we all saw that Europa League final back a couple of months ago. Surely they can't stink the place out as much as they did that night. Tottenham are desperate for a win. They've been really poor at home. They're ranked 17th in the Premier League home form for this season already. And Manchester United, after all the stick he's taken, Ruben Amorim, they actually go there. And I would probably say they are the favourites today. They've been playing some nice stuff of late. They've got some, obviously, the big result at Liverpool the other week. They drew last week, but, you know, they again will fancy their chances of coming away from Tottenham with a result. That's at lunchtime today.
Most definitely looking forward to a big afternoon of football and, of course, the best coverage from The Sun, who are always there with the exclusives when it comes to the big football stories. Gary Stonehouse, thank you for that, North East and Yorkshire correspondent for The Sun. Listen, next up, we're going to stay on this story. World War II veteran Alec Penstone surprised ITV presenters by saying that actually it wasn't worth fighting the Second World War because of what Britain has become. Well, we'll get reaction from a man that has served with great distinction in the British military. He's also the heroic former Brexit Secretary. Sir David Davis is next.
at this end, apart from this rather disturbing poll that says 8 in 10 say the nation is divided now. That wasn't meant to be the order of events in the 21st century.
It certainly wasn't, and I was deeply troubled by the comment we had earlier by somebody who had literally fought for this country in the Second World War. And to think that those that gave their lives, those that risked their lives to fight for this great country, are now looking at the state that we're currently in and thinking, you know what, this wasn't worth it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, it's the only story in town. It is a viral clip of World War II veteran Alec Penstone speaking to GMB, ITV, Kate Garraway and Adil Ray, revealing his dissatisfaction with having sacrificed so much in the Second World War, only to lament what has become of this country. Here's the clip. Take a listen. It's pretty extraordinary.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
What do you mean by that, though? At this point?
What we fought for, and what we fought for was our freedom. We find that even now it's downsight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
Well, in just a few minutes' time, we're going to be speaking to former Marines hero Ant Middleton. Is live on the show at 9:30. But first, let's speak to someone else that served in the armed forces for approximately 15 years, including at 21 SAS, the Reserve Regiment of the Special Air Service. It is the Conservative MP and former chief Brexit negotiator, Sir David Davis. Good morning, Sir David.
Let's press on.
Well, definitely, absolutely. Now, Sir David, let me ask you, sir, and thank you for that correction. Can I ask you your reaction to this clip? Why do you think it's gone viral?
Well, because it strikes at a chord. I mean, I don't agree with him. I think the battle, the war that was fought for our freedom was worth doing, but it's not unusual. Quite a lot of older soldiers. I met a 95-year-old guy at the Garden Remembrance on Thursday of this week at Westminster Abbey, who was, he didn't say the same thing, but he was saying, you know, the country has changed. He doesn't really recognise it. I mean, all this cancel culture, all these woke wars, all this suppressing of people's right to free speech, all this policemen turning up and telling people that, you know, they're going to take them down the station if they don't apologise for saying something online.
Yeah.
These are all at odds with what is a sort of our national character, our national institution, which is, you know, we are the country in the world, in my view, without doubt, that is the freest in the world, and one important part of that is free speech, and that obviously there's been a lot of erosion of it. It's coming back, I think, but it's been eroded a lot in the last decade or two, and so you can understand, I mean, why somebody who's given fantastic service as that man had, put his life on the line, how he may feel, well, what was I fighting for? But, you know, nevertheless, let's be clear, we owe those people our modern freedoms, and we should never underestimate it.
You're absolutely right, Sir David, and it's obviously the great legacy of two world wars that we enjoy the freedom we have today. But it's definitely struck a note, hasn't it? It's gone viral for a reason. I'm getting so many calls and texts to the show, a full switchboard, And Sally responding, Sir David, to a call I've just taken from Malcolm in Devon, who's also served in the military. And she says, Malcolm speaks for all of us and what we're all thinking. We respect our veterans and fallen, but are very worried about the direction of the country. And Steph says, good morning, Mark. This has sparked an important conversation. We need a complete net zero on all immigration. We are full. This has definitely sparked a conversation around the direction of the country and in particular current levels of immigration.
Well, certainly that's part of it. I mean, people worry about the culture, but the other side of the coin, remember, is that the Britain that soldier fought for was an open Britain. It was one where people came from what was then the British Empire, came to Britain, and were an important part of building it up. So we shouldn't underestimate that too. But I think what you're seeing is a perfectly reasonable nervousness, fear that we're losing what we fought for. I don't think we will. I think we still have to continue the fight in a different way. We have to continue to fight in a political way. But nevertheless, you can understand the fears. It's also some very specific things too. I mean, it's slightly off subject for this, but a lot of my veteran friends are feeling the country's letting them down, the government's letting them down in terms of the way it treats them, let's say those who served in Northern Ireland, all of the controversies going on about that too. So you can understand why veterans feel that their service, their sacrifice, the sacrifice of their friends who died, is not being properly recognised, is not being honoured, is not being adhered to. And that's why programs like yours, talkTV in general, and others like them, are doing such a fantastic job in fighting the corner for free speech, the continuation of all the institutional things that make Britain what it is. Our free speech, our privacy, our right, as it were, not to be stopped in the street by the policeman and asked for an ID card. There are vast elements of British society which people admire. And people not just here, they admire around the whole world, and we should preserve them. We should fight today to preserve what he fought to give us 50 years ago.
Most definitely. And those veterans about whom you speak, and we acknowledge them this weekend, Sir David, are mystified that they put their lives on the line to protect the national boundaries of this country, something that various governments have failed to do in recent decades in the Channel.
Yeah, that's certainly true, and it is no doubt about 80% of the population worry about it and think it's possibly the most important thing we have to deal with, and it has real implications. I mean, the immigration issue generally, people often say, "Oh, you're being racist if you talk about immigration." Look, immigration has implications for our borders, for our public services, for employment, for wages. For taxes, it puts a burden on all those things, and so it should be managed. I'm not a zero immigration man at all, but it should be managed properly so that the tolerance and the mutual respect that has existed in our country for centuries, literally centuries, is preserved, is not challenged by carelessness or weakness on the part of governments. And you're quite right, and I'm afraid it's governments of all persuasions. It's not just the current government, it's governments of all persuasions that have fallen down on this, and they need to get a grip of it.
Does Mr. Johnson, the former Conservative Prime Minister, have a case to answer for the so-called Boris wave, Sir David?
Well, I think all politicians, frankly, I mean, this started really under Tony Blair when I was Shadow Home Secretary. I remember vividly standing at the dispatch box and saying to David Blunkett, the then Home Secretary, well, how many people are going to be let in by this new relaxation of the rules? And he said 13,000. And so I kept pressing on it time after time after time. And very soon he got to the point of saying, well, the Home Office says 13,000. This is the Home Secretary blaming his own department for getting it wrong. So it goes right back to then. And one of the problems, I'm afraid, is that successive governments have thought, well, this is a way of growing the economy. If you have 1 million more people, you'll have a couple of % bigger economy. Well, technically that's true, but what matters is how the economy serves each of us. What if you like the GDP per capita, to put it in technical terms, that the economy should grow faster than the population.
Yeah.
And they ignored that. And in order to get good economic numbers, they allowed millions of people in. It ended up being about 6 million over several years, over a decade or two. And that's created the problem that we're now struggling to get right.
Do you have regrets that this continued on the watch of the Conservatives, and particularly in the last few years of the previous administration? I mean, I've got a message here from Elizabeth. She's actually called the show. I don't know if we'll have time to squeeze her in, but she said, we did not vote for this. I've got so many viewers and listeners. They're not racist, David, as you said.
Nobody did. I mean, nobody did. I mean, yeah. I think most people recognise it's helped to bring people in who can earn a living and support the. Sure. And I think right across the political board you'll see this, but it's the question of scale, of how much. And nobody, I mean, no manifesto in the last 50 years has said, we're going to let in 2 million more people, or whatever the number is for each government. Nobody said that, and quite rightly people are cross about it. I mean, I am myself, and therefore it's got to be corrected. All political parties have got to face up to this. This is not free. Letting people in without limit. It's not free. It causes pressures on all sorts of aspects of our society, and it also undermines, as I said, the tolerance and the good relationship between the communities that has historically been a characteristic of Britain. We are the most tolerant, most liberal country in the world in many respects, and we want to preserve that. And the way to preserve it is not to test it to the point of destruction, which is sort of what's happening at the moment.
Sir David, a real privilege to have you on the show. Do join us again soon when your schedule allows. Sir David Davis is the former chief Brexit negotiator, and lots and lots of interesting points he's made there in relation to the remarks by World War II veteran Alec Penstone. Let me also tell you, rather importantly, that next up we're going to be speaking to a very significant figure with a big military past. It is the Marines hero, Ant Middleton, is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Now, Ant Middleton is a British TV personality and former UK Special Forces soldier, Royal Marines Commando and Royal Engineer in the British Army. And he's the former chief instructor on the Channel 4 television series SAS Who Dares Wins. He joins us now on Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Ant.
Good morning, Mark. How are you, buddy?
Very well. Thanks for making the time to join us this morning. This viral video has gone viral for a reason. For those just joining us, take a listen to World War II veteran Alec Penstone, who actually regrets the sacrifice made by so many given the state of the country in 2025. Here he is speaking to GMB and Kate Garraway and what's the other guy? Adil Ray. Take a listen to this.
Our message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
What do you mean by that, though? At this point?
What we fought for, was our freedom. We find that even now it's downsight worse than what it was when I fought for it.
Ant Middleton, the fight was not worth it, the sacrifice. Is Alec Penstone right?
The quick answer to that is yes, Mark. He's right. And I think it goes a lot deeper than the interview. And I wouldn't expect someone like Adil Ray to understand what he meant, hence why he went, what do you mean by this? I'd love to have grabbed, Adil Ray by the scruff of the neck and thrown him back to 1944 on the landing crafts, on the beaches of Normandy, so he could actually see the carnage and the real sacrifices that these gentlemen made, and also for him to look to his left and to his right and realise that they look nothing like him. For him to have the audacity to say, what do you mean? God, that angered a lot of people, and I think that's one of the reasons why the video went viral.
What was he getting at? Because Jane has texted me about that, and she said, Mark, surely the worst part of that interview was Adil Ray asking what Alec meant. How ridiculous. What do you think Adil Ray was playing at when he said that?
He was basically baiting, wasn't he? Let's be honest, like a lot of politicians do nowadays. Sadiq Khan is a great rage baiter when it comes to that. We all know what he meant. He didn't need to reply to that. He didn't need to ask that question. Now, this goes a lot deeper, as I said, to many veterans. Many veterans will agree with you, if not all veterans, with Alec. Many serving personnel, and I probably speak for the majority or the vast majority, will agree with Alec, apart from the higher echelons of the MOD that are being used as a political tool, but that's another conversation.
Yeah.
But when you look at modern day society, this is what Alec meant, modern day society and the sacrifices, of thousands of individuals, of Brits, abroad. This isn't on our shores. This is going from our shores to prevent our shores from being breached or invaded in the first place. To go abroad and to give your life, and for many of them not to come back and to be buried abroad. The sacrifice, looking at modern day society and looking at the invasion of our shores now, military-aged, fighting-age males, coming over undocumented, unchecked, just being let through our Navy, let's call it, our primary line of defence, which are our waters. Now, we've got three lines of defence. Our waters should be run by the Navy. Our shores, if our shores are invaded, the Army then take hold. And if it's our skies, it's our phenomenal RAF. And I think when he looks at that from a military perspective, we are failing on every metric when it comes to our MOD. And because he fought in the military, the British military, for our country, I can totally understand where he's coming from, how he's felt let down, and how the sacrifice in modern day society wasn't worth the result.
Well, sadly, that is the sentiment of the video, which is why it's made such a splash. And it's not just the boats, is it, Ant? It's also the colossal scale of legal net migration in which the country has changed beyond belief at incredible pace, and a policy for which no one voted.
Absolutely. And again, this is so many sort of verticals to this. You know, you look at the current state of safety and security in the UK. Let's not even mention London. Let's go talk about the UK. What Alec mentions about sacrifice is British lives were sacrificed in order so we could have a safe and secure country, that it didn't reach our shores. Now, whether this is extremists, whether this is illegal immigration, whatever's happening in the UK right now, British lives are being taken on a daily basis. And this goes back to, again, why it goes a lot deeper. British lives are being taken, whether it's our children, we can go back to Southport, whether it's British lives being stabbed on the streets. We go back to the maniac that went on that rampage and stabbed or tried to murder 8 to 10 people. You know, these are British lives that are being taken, nobody else. So when he talks about the sacrifice of British lives from World War I and World War II, ultimately what's happening in the UK as well, we can see those sacrifices being made on our shores. And I think that's the result that he talks of as well. British lives are being taken on a daily basis due to a failure of government, due to a failure of safety and security, and due to a failure of the utilisation of our military.
Is it a defence to say that people like Axel Radicobana and the person that's now being charged for this attack in Cambridgeshire were British born?
Listen, it's not about race, it's not about religion, it's about culture and law and order. This is what's really, we get distracted by that we're in a religious, no, it's not about religion, it's not about race. You know, it's never been about that. It's about culture, the preservation of British culture. We can preserve our British culture. In turn, we preserve British law and order, which is huge. And then in turn, we preserve British lives, because British law and order is intertwined with British culture, which is, you know, gives us our freedom, gives us a fair trial, gives us safety, or should give us safety and security. So actually, we have a huge law and order problem and a huge identity problem, which is our British culture, because our British culture is being suppressed. When it's suppressed, we have a lack of identity. And when we have a lack of identity, we have a lack of purpose, a lack of belonging. And guess what happens? Frustration, anger, and violence. And we are in that anger phase at the moment, and we're teetering into violence very, very soon, which needs to be prevented. That stage needs to be prevented at all costs. But the layout of the land in the UK, my ear is very close to the ground, Mark. And the trembles, you know, the cries that I can hear cannot go unattended, you know, cannot go unheard. And we, you know, the UK is an unsafe place to be, as many countries will tell you right now, and it needs turning on its head ASAP. But if we can preserve our British culture and our law and order, everything else should fall into place.
And preserving British culture, our values, our traditions, everything that makes the country great, and law and order are not possible with levels of illegal immigration that we're currently experiencing, which is 50,000 people plus per year. And it's also not compatible with mass legal immigration either.
It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And because we're being governed by external politics, which is being used against our British culture and against British citizens and British natives, it's impossible at the moment. This is why we need a new government in place. We need a preservation, like I said. We need to really preserve our British culture and really dig into the law and order and how that should be completely stripped down and rejigged.
Yeah. Is it too late though, Ant? Is the damage done?
No, it's never too late, Mark. It's never too late. And it's people like yourself, like myself, and for me, like the likes of Nigel Farage, that are stepping forward, that are stepping in to implement drastic change. Now, we're at the stage where change is not enough. It's not a case of, let's do a few policies here and there and amend this. We need drastic change. We need drastic change in government. We need drastic change within within the mayoral positions across the UK. And we can only hold out for hope until the general election and those mayoral elections come along. But please do hold out for hope, because there are good British people that are stepping up and stepping forward.
What would that drastic change look like? I know you've had your eye on the mayoralty of London, but whoever gets into number 10 at the next election, if they are going to be somebody that represents radical change, what would it look like? What levers would you pull to save this country, Ant?
I think some zero tolerance policies need to come into play. And that goes all the way from the bottom. You know, when people think about zero tolerance policies, they think about gun crime, knife crime, the obvious ones, but just all the way down to phone theft. You know, people aren't just nicking your phones, they're nicking your bank details, they're nicking your identity, then they're pinching absolutely everything. So these zero tolerance policies from all levels, from ground level all the way up, are absolutely crucial, along with accountability policies. People and organizations need to be held to account. Once you hold someone to account and you put them through a certain system, then you watch how they get to work and how actually they uphold a certain law, they uphold a certain policy when you thrust them into the limelight. So I think good zero tolerance policies, which in turn act as deterrent policies, and some overlaying accountability policies. They need to be implemented with immediate effect with anyone getting into some kind of power.
And I've received an absolutely full message board in relation to what you've had to say. Tom in Northumberland says, Mark, as an army veteran, Ant speaks for me and millions of other veterans. Totally agree with Ant Middleton, says Francis in Sussex. And similarly, MBPK says, Mark, I agree with everything that Ant Middleton is saying. I feel exactly the same. And thank you so much for joining us. I do hope we can continue this conversation in the near future. My thanks there to former military hero, definitely Marines star, the one and only Ant Middleton. Brilliant stuff, a very important conversation. More on this to come. Don't go anywhere. This is Talk Breakfast.
good at this end, apart from this rather disturbing poll that says 8 in 10 say the nation is divided now. That wasn't meant to be the order of events in the 21st century.
It certainly wasn't, and I was deeply troubled by the comment we had earlier by somebody who had literally fought for this country in the Second World War. And to think that those that gave their lives, those that risked their lives to fight for this great country, are now looking at the state that we're currently in and thinking, you know what, this wasn't worth it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Can I thank you for the calls, the texts? It's been such a big reaction to the brave remarks of this wonderful war veteran, 100 years of age, who said, you know, was it really worth the fight? It's been a really important national conversation. We're going to continue that conversation tomorrow, back on Talk Breakfast from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Don't miss it. But we're going out with a bang now, because I'm delighted to say with me in the studio for Retro Rewind, where we choose a nostalgic year of the past, is Virgin Radio's Steve Denyer. Hello, Steve.
Good morning. We're going to do 1997. Something massive happened in this year. You know that it's very rare that I think everybody listening and watching will remember where they were when this story broke. And I'm going to play you a tiny bit, OK, right now. Everyone will remember this. Take a look at this.
This is BBC Television from London. Normal programming has been suspended. And we now join Martin Lewis in the news studio.
This is BBC Television from London. Diana, Princess of Wales, has died after a car crash in Paris. The French government announced her death just before 5 o'clock this morning. Buckingham Palace confirmed the news shortly afterwards. Normal programmes have been suspended while we bring you the latest developments throughout the morning.
All those years later, still spine-chilling.
It does send shivers, doesn't it? It's just incredible. I remember waking up that morning. You know, 32 million people watched that breaking news coverage that morning on the BBC and around the world, you know. So there was then this kind of terrific week of grief, wasn't there, of loss, of people crying, you know, on the streets of London. And every single day the momentum built to the funeral, which of course happened on the following Saturday. Elton John somehow sang Candle in the Wind, and that was released, and you know, goodness knows how he did that without crying in the middle of it, but he did it, and it was released. It became the biggest selling single of all time when that was released. But huge week, wasn't it? I mean, up there with, you know, your 9/11s and those massive breaking news stories that everybody can recall who you were with, where you were watching it, what you were doing. So
yes, I mean, without wishing to overstate it, it was kind of our JFK moment in a way. I mean, she wasn't you know, assassinated, or well, not unless you ask some people, members of the family. But the bottom line is that it was, you know, it was a huge national moment and a tragedy. And, you know, Diana, to this day, still deeply missed.
Yeah, all these years later.
You could just imagine what it would be like if she was around now. She'd be obviously still stunning. She'd be in her early 60s. Yeah. And she'd probably be dealing with Prince Harry a bit more effectively than his father is.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Just a great figure and a huge loss to the country.
And of course, somebody who had to step in and deal with this was Tony Blair. Now, he'd just been, the other massive event this year, he'd been elected. So out go the Tories after, I think it was 17 years of ruling the nation. In comes, you know, New Labour, Tony Blair, that landslide victory. Things can only get better. Do you remember that, watching, what was it, John Prescott dancing, the worst dad dancing I've ever seen? It was all going on in 1997. And of course, some would say that Tony Blair's biggest moment was having to deal and to give that speech to the nation that morning after Diana died.
Yes, and he was good at those. He could rise to the occasion, Blair, couldn't he?
When you know, the People's Princess.
All of that.
That was perfectly placed,
Pitch
wasn't it?
perfect.
Pitch perfect.
Did you ever meet Diana?
I didn't know, but I met Charles.
Did you?
But
yeah.
I think they were. It was at a rubbish incinerator in 1991. But that's a different story.
Right? Was he nice to you?
He was very nice.
Oh, I'm glad to hear
but
it.
there's a nice little picture of me as a junior reporter interviewing Prince Charles. So 1997 was also the year that the Brit Awards happened. Now Ben Elton hosted the Brit Awards this year. What everybody remembers one thing: Jerry Halliwell and that Union Jack dress. You remember it?
Of course I do.
So originally it was a Gucci dress that she didn't want to wear it because she said it's boring. So they basically attached a tea towel. It was a tea towel.
I
that
didn't
Union
realise that.
dress, the Union Jack dress, and it's gone down in history as one of those kind of really proud moments. It was Cool Britannia, wasn't it? It was all the Britpop happening. It was the same Brit Awards that Michael Jackson performed Earth Song, and he kind of had this kind of like Jesus Messiah complex going on, and Jarvis Cocker got on stage and got his bum out.
And it was a moment of great national self-confidence. Jerry Halliwell representing, patriotism and the fact that Britain was culturally very significant at that point.
Yeah.
Because it was Britpop, it was Oasis, that the Spice Girls had broken America.
Yeah, we were, all eyes around the world were on us
And
culturally.
I hate to get political with you, but the economy was booming thanks to the previous Chancellor of the Exchequer, the great Ken Clarke, who'd actually, Blair inherited quite a handsome treasure chest, and so the country
really rare
had a spring in its step.
It's rare where you can have a snapshot and go, right then, right there, everything seemingly was great. I was like 20 years old. It was a great time in the 90s to be in your 20s. It really was. Everything was going. Chris Evans was doing TFI Friday.
Absolutely massive.
It was just huge.
TFI Friday, which was live at that time, unpredictable appointment to view TV.
Yes.
And I remember at the end of that tumultuous week, you've got a new Prime Minister in Tony Blair, you've got the tragic death of Diana, and then you've got the funeral, all in quick succession. And then Elton John turns up on TFI Friday to tell Chris Evans all about it and what it was like having to sing that song. And it was all just a big popular culture moment. And Chris Evans at the very heart of it. And of course, Chris Evans, the star of Virgin Radio Breakfast.
Yeah, and I just always, at any given opportunity, I ask him about the 90s and I ask him about those shows. It was really, you had like The Word and you had TFI, and they were the moments we all remember because it was live. Chris did that completely live at tea time on Channel 4. I think everyone remember when Shaun Ryder came on the show. And there are a lot of complaints after that, but it happened, and it was the 90s, and it was allowed to happen because anything could go. Can I tell you about the biggest movie of this year? Now, this is very in sync with the whole kind of, we were grieving after the Diana incident, and there was a movie that came out called The Full Monty. Okay, this movie was supposed to go straight to video. It cost £3 million to make. It was kind of panned as being a tiny movie, but it came out. The nation needed cheering up, and we went along and we saw it. A movie about, the guys stripping. Everyone remembers that scene in the post office. What was it, Donna Summer Hot Stuff? Yeah. And they start jigging around. It was done, the strip scene at the end was done in front of a live audience. They had to learn how to strip and dance, and the movie went on to make so much money. It was the highest grossing UK film of 1997, and it was that moment and the Spice Girls Spice Up Your Life that cheered us up after the Diana thing.
I think it made about 30 times its budget.
It's credible, isn't it? It was big in America as well. Everybody got
Imagine being the businessman that invested in that. Is that, okay, go on, I'll chuck a couple of grand in if I get a percentage point.
And they thought it would just be a video because Blockbuster Video was big back then. We would just go and hire and stuff. The Teletubbies.
And the soundtrack of that was great as well, wasn't
amazing,
it? Hot Stuff, you can leave your hat on. And the very moving storyline of one of the guys he was unemployed because it had a kind of social background to it, didn't it?
Of course it did.
And he used to put a suit on and get his briefcase and pretend to go to work to keep his wife not worrying about him. And it was very moving.
It's one of those great British movies, akin to kind of Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, where it's real, and it gets under your skin. And there were happy moments, there were sad moments, but we all related to it. And